Good. We'll call the Sandy City Council work session to order. Just a quick review of tonight's agenda. We're just going over our council rules revisions in this work session. Of course, then we'll be having our Sandy Urban Renewal Board meeting, which is a separate meeting from this at 6:45. Okay, so you want to go ahead? Let's do roll.
Okay, Councillor Piesel.
Here.
Councillor Smallwood.
Excused.
Okay, Councillor Sheldon.
Here.
Councillor Walker.
Here.
Councillor Exner.
Here.
Councillor Hokinson.
Here.
Mayor Pulliam.
Here. All right, Jordan, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so council, this has been a kind of a work in progress for a few years, actually, in updating our city council rules. And if you remember a couple years ago with the goal setting, there was conversation about taking a look at the LOC's model rules and seeing about adapting those rules to City of Sandy's rules. And so Jeff has kind of gone through the effort of taking a look at those model rules, looking at our existing city council rules. I think were last adopted or comprehensively reviewed in 2015. And then there was, I think, a review that took place in 2017 or 18 in there too. And then the council also had a work group established, or kind of a team that was going to take a look at the rules. There's been a few topics that have come up over the last year or so. The councilors have shown an interest in reviewing the rules. And I think you guys are well aware of the request to kind of bring this in front of you as a work session. There's a lot to go through, and Jeff's going to go through as much as we can get through tonight. And kind of, take your lead where your questions go and stuff. But yes, things to highlight based on sort of those categories that we've heard from council and have had interest in, and a couple of options of how to proceed after tonight too, whether bring it back for another work session or meeting if we're good with the changes, or kind of want to peel off and do another kind of work group process to bring it back to the full council. So I'll let Jeff take it away and kind of guide this conversation, but as always, work session, jump in, talk, ask questions.
Thanks, Jordan. Council, I'll apologize in advance. The allergies are hitting me hard, so if I start coughing, that's why. But I have some water to sip on, so it should be okay. As Jordan
We
said,
get one nice day, Jeff.
I know.
One nice day.
I know. So Jordan already touched on this last passed by resolution 2015. Although there have been two other efforts to update the rules that I could find, but never that got all the way to fruition. So this council wanted a fresh start, made this a council goal, and also kind of endorsed the idea of using the League of Oregon Cities model rules as a baseline, which is something that's been talked about in previous years as well. And then, as Jordan indicated, there are kind of some specific topics that it might make sense to kind of hone in on. So there's a new draft in your packet in red line version, and in the columns, in kind of comments in the margins, we tried to notate the different changes that have been made and the reasons why. So comments that are marked in green are edits to the model rules to kind of more specifically reflect Sandy's standard practices. An example of that would be like our normal order of agenda business, for example, because they had their own, but that's not what we're used to doing. So that's an example that would be marked in green. And then, but what we also did is we didn't just want to totally throw out, because there's some good stuff in the old rules as well. So we looked at the old rules and tried to pull over important elements of those. And so in the track changes version, and those sorts of things are marked in blue. And some examples of that would be the policies for expenses and reimbursement when counselors go to conferences and things like that, or the committee liaison process. So those seemed like important things to pull over into the new draft. Another thing to point out is that we use the approach of cutting out or not bringing over from the old rules text that's specifically preempted by our city charter or by state law, rather than trying to state it again. Because especially if state law changes, then you'd have to change your rules, and better to just cite state law. So there's a big long change log in the staff report. Jordan gave me a hard time. He said it was the longest table he's ever seen in a staff report. It's like 5 pages long, but tried to be thorough. If something is not in the change log, that means we left it as is. So if you're looking through those different, subject lines, you don't find something that you're interested in, it probably means it was left as is, either as it was written in the LOC model rules, or it's something in the old rules that we just pulled over. But you can also see, so I'll just say, so the track changes draft is in your packet. You'll also see a clean copy of the new version following that. You'll also see the old rules with comments saying what happens to each specific item in the old rules. And then we also threw in the city charter, because why not? So
Why not?
that's a lot.
Do it.
And I'm also, so that's quite a lot. And I apologize, we tried to be thorough. I'm also aware of the fact that we have a urban renewal meeting to get to. So in the interest of time, here's what we thought we could do tonight. I'm just gonna stop sharing for 1 second. Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, no, it's okay. So that should be, let me know if she doesn't get in. She should be coming over here in a second. There we go. Yeah. Councilor Smallwood has joined us. So the goals for tonight, what we thought, first and foremost, let's get through those specific discussion topics that we've heard from this council over the last 18 months. And those are these 4 issues: statements made representing the city and how to handle that in public settings. Code of conduct language. You may recall that there was a code of conduct established for boards and commissions, and there was discussion of maybe we ought to put that in the council rules. So that would be another one. Number 3 is the general issue of council interactions with staff and how to handle that. And then the last one being whether to include public communications to council in agenda packets. It's something that's been discussed. So those 4 issues, and then anything else that we have time to get to. And then after tonight's work session, maybe you think it's great, maybe you think we're almost there, in which case we can just incorporate your feedback and come back to you for adoption. Or if you think it needs more attention, I would be happy to work with the existing subcommittee, which is the mayor and Councilor Hokinson, to kind of put more work into a new draft. Whichever way you'd like to go, those are 2 ideas of how to go forward. So if it's okay with the council, we can just dive into those 4 main issues and just kind of take them one at a time. Would that be okay?
Yeah,
Mayor?
that works great. Thank you, Jeff.
So the first one is public statements made representing the city. And so this is on page 33 of the new draft rules. So there's a distinction being made here. Question is a council member appearing as a representative of the city? In which case, what's written in the rules here in the draft says you will only state the official council position. That's from the LOC model rules. However, in contrast, if you're appearing in a personal capacity, the idea would be to first state the council's position on that issue. And then if you go on to add your personal views, you would specifically state that these are your personal views. That's actually from the existing rules.
Can you just clarify where you are? Because I'm on page 33 and that's chapter 4 land use hearings, which I think what you're talking about is probably in chapter 8.
It's page 39 on
It's
the
chapter 8.
PDF.
39.
Or yeah, 33
It's
at the bottom
It's
of
the
the page.
page number.
I'll tell you exactly what happened. Sorry,
Yeah,
Councilor
okay.
Walker.
So it's on page 39 of the PDF. It's 33 at the bottom of the page is the
Right.
hard coded.
Thanks, Councilor Hokinson. Yeah, I didn't account for the staff report at the beginning. Sorry, Councilor Walker. Yeah,
Okay.
And it's at the bottom, section 3, statements to the media and other orgs.
this is chapter
Right.
8 of
Right,
the new
chapter
draft.
8. Okay.
My
Okay,
apologies.
that for me, it's on page 42. I don't know if everybody else has that up there. Okay.
Special stuff.
Chapter
I
8,
just saw-
section 3, statements to the media and other organizations.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, sorry about that. So again, if you're appearing in your personal capacity, the idea would be first state the council's position, then add your personal thoughts, clearly delineating that these are your personal thoughts. And then also from the existing rules, we pulled over, it says in situations of lobbying, council members will avoid expressions of personal dissent from an adopted council policy, because it The old rules really specifically said, hey, when we're lobbying, it's important that we speak with one voice. So thoughts or feedback on this particular one?
Is there gonna be more to this?
This is the slide for this issue.
And the reason I say that is I feel like this, these rules kind of are like the old world. In some ways, right? Like there's a total social media component to the world today. That's my only like thought as I stare at this is like, there's just a social media component to this that kind of seems like it could possibly land outside of some of this that may just need to be specifically addressed.
I don't know, I'm out of turn. Rather.
Oh, are there others? I haven't looked yet. Sorry. Go ahead, John.
I was just gonna say, so for me, I think when you're representing the city, I mean, I think that's the easy one. The personal opinions is really where we hit Facebook
That's
and
right.
our campaigns and everything else. And there's a couple ways to look at it, but I'm a little concerned that when we put things like must first indicate the majority position of the council, while I like the intent of that, the difficulty in always knowing a majority opinion on any given issue could be difficult. So it would be possible for me to go off on an area that we haven't really talked about, maybe in my tenure, that was talked about in a previous, and I might be out of line. So I'm a little concerned with that, the loose language. I actually do like the original language that must state they're expressing their own opinion and not that of the city before giving a statement. I think that's just a good practice.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I agree with everything said there. I think the first and third are really easy, to your point, Don. And I think the second one, that's where I prefer. I think it's important having a lot of experience in this area, especially recent. I think it's really important to state where somewhere in your statement that it's a personal statement like what you're talking about, and where the council position is, if there's a position or even lack thereof of a position, right? To your point, like it needs to be clarified. I don't know about state first, state second, state last. That seems to get pretty specific.
Maybe it's to make every attempt to position the council, to give it a fair and balanced.
I see Carl's hand up and then Kathleen.
I guess I'm tracking with what you guys are talking about at the moment. The thing that looks like I have gotten into concern, I guess, I don't know if I've ever gotten in trouble about it, but concerned about it myself, was that as councils change and majorities change, opinions change, and so on, and especially if I voted as a minority against the other part of the council, it gets to be a little bit unwieldy about where I stand.
Yeah.
And how I should. I do like the idea of being able to say, this is my personal opinion, not one that the council has voted on or is in favor of and that kind of thing. Putting my personal opinion out there gives me a chance to say, this is where I'm at. And there are going to be times when all of us have some sort of disagreement with the rest.
Mhm.
And I know we've talked about putting a common face on it, but this is America. We do have different opinions. I just don't want to get contrary and make confusing statements that make it look like there's a lot of argument. Maybe we're trying to keep a common face on it, especially when we're lobbying.
So I think what's important to keep in mind is that when making these public statements to the media and other organizations, the reason we're being asked is because we are the city council or we're the mayor. They're not asking for, just Joe Blow on the streets opinion necessarily. They're not asking me for that opinion because I'm just a resident of Sandy. And so that's where when we use, and this is what I've lived with, for years as a professional in a government agency, is that when I'm speaking with my title, when I'm saying that I'm, Counselor Walker, I think that behooves all of us to speak on behalf of the council and represent what their position is. And if they haven't taken a position or have taken a position contrary to what I would have voted for, I don't think it's really in our best interest as a city or as a city council to be representing anything other than the official position. Or to say something like, well, we haven't had a chance to discuss and, and come to a position on that. The kind of the no comment thing is always good. So it really gets wiggly when, we say that, well, if we just say, you're asking me because I'm the counselor or the mayor, but I have all these personal opinions about stuff, that makes it very difficult for us to operate as a council when all these personal opinions get sent out there as if they represent the whole council when they don't. So I guess for me, when you're using the title, the honorary title, you speak on behalf of the whole council, where you say no comment, or you say we haven't had a chance to discuss that. That's a great idea. And then, otherwise you say, and I'm not speaking as mayor and I'm not speaking as city councilor, I'm speaking as Kathleen Walker, gal on the street, Sandy resident. You make it very clear and you don't use your title. So I think there needs to be some clarification there because those honorary titles mean something.
So just a couple of things. I see a Rich and then I see your hand on. First of all, they're not honorary titles.
No.
They're earned.
Oh, yes.
They're earned.
Yeah, you're right.
They're not bestowed upon us or given to us because of life accomplishments. You got to go out and you got to seek, the vote of our neighbors and of our voters. And they got to know where you individually stand on positions to know, who you are and what you're representing to council. And that's mayor, that's councilors, that's on your first election. That's quite frankly, even more important on your reelection. What have you been doing here? What have you been working on and what do you represent and where are your values and beliefs? And I would just finish up on that, Kathleen, with, and I can only say so much because goodness knows I've been out in the public saying my piece, giving quotes to the media, but quite frankly, Kathleen, so have you. And, you went in front of the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners and you testified on Sandy Net going outside of our jurisdiction, which is completely opposite of where our council is on positions. You lobbied individually with Anna Williams.
You have
Yes, you have.
No, I haven't.
So.
Well, first, no, we need to, no, because I'm not just, we're not just gonna say Miss Truce anymore. And then just continue on with the rest of the meeting. So are there other counselors here who have experience, who remember Kathleen going to the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners and talking about Sandy Net? And that being I believe it was in one of our Friday weekly reports. And do we remember her meeting individually with Anna Williams, lobbying on behalf of our community? Or am I just making these things up?
Nope. I did talk to Anna Williams and I went to and asked you all for talking points.
So I just,
Yeah.
Since it's a work session, I'm going to speak out of order. I apologize,
Please do.
but I really think it's important that we look forward, not back, as we look at these rules. So it's fine to think back on what we may have or haven't done, but how would this help us moving forward? And I think right now there are 4 criteria, 3 of which were under discussion.
Well, Don, it's important. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but it is important on moving forward. It's important moving forward because these are the situations in which we as counselors find ourselves in
I
an
agree,
advocating.
and we want the rules to
right?
give us guidance on what we expect you, me, all of us to do in this similar circumstance next time, right? Not what we did last time.
Sure.
And if it prohibits Kathleen from doing something, so be it, or me, or anyone else, right?
I think.
Well,
Do you want to go, Jeremy?
no, I was just gonna follow up on that one comment, but
Please, I want to.
no, I just know, and I have to say, I know for a fact that happened with the county board of commissioners because I had about 15 to 20 people texting me and emailing me and calling me that night and sending me the clips of the comments that were made on behalf of the council through you, Kathleen, and very concerned people around the county that made me not sleep for days. So I'll have to admit, I remember that day when I got all those messages and all the clips of that meeting. So that did happen, and that, I'd forgotten about it, but it was brought up. But I think it is important though, because that wasn't the voice of the, that's one example, and just that wasn't the voice of our council. It wasn't talked about in that fashion or that way. So, and it was presented across the county that way. It hurt me deeply because of the passion I had for it. And, you know, had to take a step back and think about how that would happen. So I had totally forgot about it, but until it was just brought up this minute, but I do know, because I did get many people around the county, because the two are for me very linked in the work I've done for the last, you know, almost 20 years.
Well, I'll go on the record and apologize because I've forgotten about it too. I don't even know. I mean, I don't think I've ever attended a board. I've never been to a Board of Commissioners meeting.
It was
It
on
must have
Zoom.
been like about the first month I was on the council. So I apologize. If I said something that was not, you know, in line with that. So I apologize. I guess, you know, I don't know what I said, but I'll be
No, we're
glad
on the
to.
floor.
Oh, you can talk about it later.
But
Yeah,
my only
yeah.
point, we all find ourselves in
Well,
these situations.
Yeah.
We do.
Hey, the person on computer wants to chime in.
Can't see you.
You can't see me?
Can't see you.
I'll stop the share,
There you go.
Councilor Smallwood. There we go.
Okay. I've had my hand raised for like 10 minutes. Hey, I'd like something added into this about social media as well. Because several counselors have social media platforms and various things that they log into. And they get input from the community as themselves or as counselors. And that information is not always shared with the whole council, nor is that information easily accessible unless you just happen upon it. So I would like something on there that deals with that as well.
And Mayor, there actually is a section about social media in a slide coming up here.
Okay, that's fine.
It's on the same page.
Rich, please go.
So I just want to start out by saying I agree with a lot of stuff that's already been said, just for the fact, I mean, I have some issues with some of the restricting of speech, because I think it does limit your ability in elections. I agree with Carl, this is America, we still have a voice, as in, I think we actually are entitled to a little bit different platform as you kind of stepped forward and went through the hassle to get elected and all of that, right? Because you wanted to have a voice, you wanted to have some input on that, and there should be some getting to that. I do think that, you know, to Kathleen or whoever said, you know, when you worked for an organization, get that, and I think that has some value. But also it's important to know that this is a different level within an organization. As a worker, my job is to support my boss. But when you're an elected official, I think that you have a responsibility to the citizens to, as you said, state what your opinions are so that you can be elected based on those. Also, I do think that I think some of this language I don't like. Can you put that back up, Jeff?
Yeah.
The part about having to give the council position, I don't like that. What I think it should really just take that out. I don't think, but I do think it's important to say that this is Counselor Sheldon's opinion on this matter. I think that I'm entitled to get to say I'm a counselor. I think I have some experience and getting to set up here, I see things from a little different view than I did from that seat. And so I think that should have something. Plus, if you decide to go be reelected, you should be able to get to state what your experience is and kind of what you brought forward. And it should give you, there's a reason the incumbent thing's there. So, and then I also think it's important though that people, I don't want to just say reach out to Rich, because I think one of the things I wanted, and I've always said, is I want to elicit feedback from the community. And I think part of that feedback is that two-way dialogue. And by restricting us in doing that, by having to worry about what the council position is, that creates this barrier in that communication. So maybe if what we have to say is, hey, this is Counselor Sheldon's opinion on this matter, right? People can infer that you're one of 6 or 7. But that's your official position, and just leave it at that. I don't think we need to worry about, my opinion is we don't need to worry about what the council's position is, as long as we say this is my personal position as mayor, council, whatever.
I'll go here and over.
Yeah, I think we're always, whoever we're talking to, whether it's media or just someone that stops you on the street or a phone call, we hold a position regardless of that. In fact, an example is the other day, someone goes, I recognize you. Well, where do you recognize me from? I don't know.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure it out. And he's like, oh, you know, I'm on the city council. Oh, that's where I know you from. Yeah, you know, of course they ask a question, you know, and you know, what's this? And so you're always are wearing the title or the hat. That doesn't mean that you can't have a personal opinion by any means. That's not it by all. But this is what I've always thought of myself trying to do is like, if the council has made a decision or made those type of things, this is speaking of what the council has done. Or has had that position. If we know that, if we don't know it in some circumstances, or we're not there, you know, I've always stated, you know, that this is what the talking points are or whatever, and I'm only one of 7 votes, right? I don't speak for the council. I'm only one of 7 votes, and you know, we'll see where things go. That's how I perceive it, because I never want to have spoken for the group as a whole. And we have different situations. There's at times when you get in front of the TV camera, which is a different situation than when you're sitting in a warehouse talking to a FedEx driver who's realizes you're on city council and wants to know about XYZ, or you get a phone call from a business owner, but or you're in one of the meetings that, you know, we're all part of, that we have, you know, they look to us as the liaison about other topics. And then, hey, on the side going, you know, after it's all over, going, hey, what's going on down there? You know, and or whatever. Always speak as if something can be decided on as this is my opinion. Now, I don't speak for the council. And I think some of you have seen that as I've been in different boards. You know, Kathleen and Parks, you know, years prior to being on council when I was a park liaison, you know, trying to ever speaking for the council, just representing what was kind of going on.
Donica?
So I'd like to see some changes to the section. I would like to see, when we're representing the city, I'd like to see that defined. So we get a little more definition about what does it mean to represent the city, so we know that that section pertains, so that we differentiate between that and personal opinion. Because I think that a lot of our discussion has crossed that line and blurred it. So I think we can have different guidance or expectations for each of those categories. And third, I'd like to make a statement in here about an aspirational goal that we strive to reflect, or to reflect the council opinion and adhere to unanimous decisions and things like that as appropriate, so that it's separate from our, so the statement on when you're representing the city, blah, 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 when you're personal, you know, whatever we end up with, but then just a general statement under this section that says we strive to reflect that council opinion, so that we capture it regardless of what situation we're in, that we do the best we can. But it's clearly not it's not something you can enforce on somebody. You're not going to censure somebody because they didn't put the comma in the right place on you know, citing that
Right.
council position.
Right, I like that. I like that. I like a lot of what Rich had to say too. Yeah.
So I'm pretty much in agreement with what you guys have been talking about, but I do think there are times when the council has decided to make some sort of emphasis. We're all going to go after a certain amount of money for the sewer plant next year. That's going to be our big number. And we're going to try to make that a thing that we will be lobbying for, and all of our energies will be spent on. That to me is a little different situation than maybe a disagreement, maybe a 5-4 decision, especially I'm going to be running this year again. So I will probably say I don't think the direction of the council was the way I would like to look at it seemed on. And I want to tell you that this is something that I'm going to try to move the council to a different location. Now, not that I would disagree with the council in that, you know, we voted, we're going to move forward on that particular decision, but there are going to be times when people say, you really believe that? And I'm going to say, you know, I really don't. There are things that I believe because of my experiences, my prejudices, whatever. I think that's really important for me to put out on the table as an elected official. So I think that there is some really important times that are different. So council has made some decisions. This is what we agree that or at least by majority rules. We're gonna go, maybe we're just changing as we go, because we have made some changes as we go through time. Some of those things are confusing. Maybe that's the way those kind of things are. I have a couple more questions that are outside of this. I don't know how. we're
Let's try to
gonna
get through the general
Okay.
topics. And then maybe go back
I'll
to that.
keep it at that.
Yep, Kathleen.
So I would ask everybody, is there any limits to what somebody can say on behalf of the council, but speaking in their personal capacity? And I'm just gonna throw the one out there. Is it okay for me to advocate that people violate the laws and regulations of the city, the county, or the state?
Not on behalf of council. That's not what happened.
So I think once again, we have
Yeah.
to really
I'm trying
differentiate
not to
between
backwards.
personal and that. So when you ask the question, is there limits on when you're representing the city? I think absolutely, right? But are there limits on my personal opinion? I don't think so. I think that infringes on my rights. But I think we have to get real clear about the difference between those two. And when I'm campaigning for that's my personal office. That's my personal thing. I think it's a very gray line that we have to be careful with.
And I think the legal, we should be getting legal advice on that too, just to make sure that we're not putting the city at risk when we make personal.
We've
things.
asked and answered that question in executive sessions, in front of the general public. I mean, over and over and over and repeatedly, the attorney has said that the way that we're proceeding is fine. He was at 3 or 4 times during the opening movement by you on that, counselor, and the attorney continually gives the same answer. So I don't know how many times we need to clarify that this is the United States of America, that you are provided the freedom of speech, the ability to say what's on your mind. And you may be mayor, you need to, and as you're part of a board, you need to say what the council's doing versus what you're doing. But at no point during what was just brought up as a possible scenario did the mayor ever say that the Sandy City Council is advocating for businesses to open. It did not happen. Now, as mayor, I did, but I have a freedom of speech and I earned the title of mayor.
And if down the road, something like that happens again, right? And we have this improved section and somebody goes off script and while representing the city, then we go to the section at the end that talks about censure and what are ramifications and what the council can do to kind of bring people in. And I think I'm really uncomfortable trying events in the past as part of this.
And I just want to say, Mayor, I'm not trying to put you in a bad light or anything, and I'm not looking backwards. I'm looking at, I've been on the receiving end of being implied that I said something wrong or whatever. And so, what I'm hearing from the rest of you is that it's a free country. We can say whatever we want. Okay, well, that's great. Now I know the answer when I get, pointed out that I said something at a meeting or whatever.
But there's
So,
number 3.
Yeah,
In lobbying situations, council members will avoid expressions of personal dissent from an adopted council policy.
and I didn't.
So what we're talking about there, though, okay, so let's get clear, right? Is when you go in front of the Board of County Commissioners.
In the
or-
future.
Sure, okay, or in front of the state legislature Ways and Means Committee, right? And you sit there, Stan Employum, Mayor Sandy, Kathleen Walker, City Councilor, those folks are expecting that you're sitting there as a representative of your city, asking for a wastewater grant or whatever else. That's where number 1 and number 3 are very important, right? Number 2 is more of that public interfacing, where you then get into that nuance of personal opinion versus that of the board. And that's what we're, to me, trying to clarify. My only thing is those who live in glass houses should just throw stones. And that's the only thing that I'm trying to point out is that, there's nuance to this. And the mayor's not the only person that have found themselves trying to balance this nuance. That's all.
There is one other piece to this, and it has been a council desire for as long as I've been on council, probably longer than that, is that there comes a time when some of our conversations bring in controversy that really don't have applicability to the city. And I remember Bill King and I decided we wanted to have a green space between Sandy and Gresham. And we got into all kinds of crap up to my chin. And I was called in from several different places
I remember
that
that
did
too.
that. So there is some level of decorum, I would think, that as a council, as a mayor, we would want to try to focus on the city business. We want to go out and try to put urban growth boundaries outside the city, down in somebody else's backyard, maybe on our own personal, but something like that would be, if the council decides that that's an important piece of what the city needs to do, then God bless us. But I would think, though, that we want to keep we have enough diversity, we have enough controversy in this world that bringing in stuff that doesn't apply to the cities, I think we don't need to be there.
Move forward.
Yes, absolutely. Council interactions with staff.
Very good.
No, I'm sure this is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So from the model rules, council will not interfere with day-to-day administration of business, which is the responsibility of the city manager. I should have said, excuse me. So this is chapter 9 of the new draft.
You got a page number there?
Well, it depends on how you're looking at it. In the footer, it's page 35. But it may be a different page of the PDF.
It is 35 of mine. Scroll down a couple of pages.
Yeah, it's very close to what we were just looking at.
2 pages down.
Just past it. Council will limit requests of information from staff to those questions that may be answered readily as part of staff's day-to-day responsibilities. Things of a more complex nature should be directed to the city manager. That's also from the model rules. And then 2 other points, which are council approval is required before staff spends significant time. This is pegged at an estimated 1 hour or more of work, answering questions or conducting policy research. And also that staff, this is also from the existing rules, staff responses to individual council member inquiries will be copied to all council members for their information.
A little bit of change.
Yeah.
So one of the examples I have, it's on the next page, that really kind of bothered me a bunch was because I have been in personal conversations with the lawyer a couple times concerning sensitive issues that have to do with conflict of interest and that sort of thing. And to me, to get the council's approval to have conversation about a conflict of interest, I'm not sure I want to put out on the table at the moment. I have gone to the city manager and said, I need to know, is this legal to talk to the attorney? Do I have the authority to spend that time on money on that? I'm not sure that it would be a council, in my mind, it's not a council decision. It's more of a city manager conversation and let them determine if that's something that I can go with to the attorney or not.
There's a section on the city attorney specifically, just past.
Yeah,
here.
and I
Yeah,
think
but
the League of Oregon Cities language addresses Carl's need. And so maybe we shouldn't have struck that out there completely. Maybe we need to blend the two.
But some of that applies to the staff as well. So if I want to go to Jenny, for example, and I want to advocate for some stormwater issues that I think are really important. I think I don't want to go to Jenny first and start saying, okay, here's the things I want you to do. Here's the things that I think are important. I need to find a way to get that information, and maybe it's just information so that they can make a better decision based on what staff is about. But so when does it cross the line? And
So, and we had some back and forth with staff on the city. See, I kind of disagree with this rule, you know. Because to me, the important one is the council approval required before staff spends significant time answering questions and conducting policy research. To me, that's important, right? We cannot send the staff on some direction, just one councilor, one mayor without, you know, the entire team. Now, if Don is trying to formulate maybe a policy proposal in front of council, or, you know, so he's seeking some information, some facts, and maybe Don's not ready to tip the hand of the mayor and another councilor yet in his kind of strategic approach, how he wants to bring this, you know, all kind of in front of us. Now, I think we need to be notified and approved if he has staff going for an hour and going back and forth, but part of me feels like it's none of my freaking business to a certain degree on the one-off here and there, that Don may have for staff. That's the nuance I'm struggling a little bit with that last point.
It's a fair point, and this is, that last one is something that is in the current rules, although I think it hasn't been
But we're not following.
observed for quite a while.
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean, it's a definition question too. When it's a piece of information that a counselor is requesting, I think it's, what it's telling us is, oh, one counselor has a question that may be helping them understand an issue better. Other counselors might too, and they might benefit from that information so that when it comes before the council, one counselor or two counselors has information that the other counselors don't have.
Don't you really practice that now at your own discretion?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
And we always exercise that discussion, even with the legal question, right? Because Counselor Exner may ask me a question and he may not know it's a legal question.
Right.
And I might not know that at first too. But I'm then deciding, I'm gonna go ask the city attorney's opinion on
Well,
this
because
and
to
then get
me,
back to the
what
counselor.
Carl's describing is the right way to do it to me, right? He doesn't know, he calls you tell him whether he needs to engage with the attorney or not. I don't think the rest of us need to know until Carl's made the decision whether or not he's gonna declare the conflict.
I may have
You
to
know,
accuse myself or who
Yeah.
knows what. kind of things.
And that's different than going directly, a counselor going directly to the city attorney,
right.
know.
Now that's
once or twice or
different.
three
That
times.
needs to start with
Right.
you.
But
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what I'm trying to clarify is that I'm not, are you implying that any city councilor can go directly to the attorney and not go through you?
The current draft says you can't. The original text from League of Oregon Cities said you can't.
That's true.
It says, make request to the city attorney for advice no more than once a month. As long as the request does not
Yeah.
require more than
Okay.
2 hours of attorney's
Well,
time.
yeah, unless
You can
we're-
actually cost that out.
Well, because I have,
Anybody else?
And
have to.
well, and the reason is we were getting ready to do, George annual review, right? And so, you're having those conversations, okay, we're getting ready to do this. I mean, there's nuance.
The existing rules, which are quoted in this new draft, say that exceptions to this are issues that are related to the performance of the city manager. So it does carve out things like that where it would be.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
Well, I'm good with all, I'm good with all this. The last one, just there's some nuance there. I don't know.
Yeah. I think since that's not part of the League of Oregon Cities, I would probably strike it.
Which one is that?
It's the last
The
one.
last bullet, staff responses will be copied, or soften it to say at the discretion of the city manager, may be copied if they're relevant to a topic being discussed by the council or something along these lines.
I think a practice that would be helpful for staff is also have city councilors practice discretion as well.
Hold on.
Seriously, in using the council distribution, so we'll split the discretion, right? Where if it's help us, help me figure out if you wanted to maintain some privacy or this is a personal question you may have versus we have a distribution list and I think it's pretty effective when the council's using that distribution list because I'm on it, the city attorney on it, Jeff's on it, there's and Tyler. So we can then better get the questions, answered. And then other counselors can see that question coming in that may be important for the rest of the council to hear. Then you can also decide just to send a question to me if you want to, keep it more private. That helps me. Okay, you're signaling to me that this is more of a personal question.
Right.
Versus you want me to respond all. Because I get caught in this situation now, staff does, where maybe one counselor with another counselor copied, or maybe two counselors copied. I was like, oh, this is information that probably the rest of the council should, but I don't want to put you out by copying the entire council, That's what I mean by helping us with that discussion.
So just to clarify, so I was told if I had a question of a particular staff, say, something in parks or whatever, and I would always, or anybody, Kelly or whatever about something, I would always CC you and Kelly or whoever. Is it,
What's now, Kathleen?
excuse me?
Chris, you need to mute.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, so is that not the protocol to use, or is the, and also that if we CC the rest of the city council, then we're violating some sort of the quorum stuff. So I'm a little confused and would like clarification if I could.
I think the model rules, I think, say that if you have a question that would just be a question that can be answered by any staff in their day-to-day responsibilities. Hey, how many staff do we have? Or, how many applications have we processed this week or whatever? That's fine. When it becomes more of a complicated nature or may require more, research or something up to an hour, that's when they need to be, directed to me. On the quorum thing that you're probably more talking about, deliberating and serial meetings, and when it's staff just providing information, that's fine. It's what we get in trouble is when counselors are then responding and then debating. I don't agree with this. I think we should do this. I don't think we should do that. That's a no-no.
In when we were talking about this week, that's honestly what scares me the most about that last one is just the tendency to not be thinking and reply all, and now all of a sudden we're deliberating on something.
Now, would you like me to continue?
No,
or
I think we need to probably table for now. Yeah.
Okay.
I have more questions.
I think we need another work session.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Or two.
Yeah. Well, these I think were the more. But I agree. We need another one. Okay. All right. Perfect. Let's just table this for now. I'll close the Sandy City Council work session. Perfect. Let's call this Sandy City Council meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Sandy City Council meeting. I always start off with a quick review of our agenda. We will call for the roll, then I'll look for any proposed changes to the agenda. We'll then get into public comment. We do have a public comment that was submitted for an online testimony, as well as two and a quarter testimonies in person as well. After that, we'll move ahead to the consent agenda. We'll then go to our old business, which has a public hearing for utility rates, fees, and charges, as well as a public hearing for the repeal and replacement of the Sandy Municipal Code, Chapter 8.35, which deals with public camping. Then we'll go to our authorization of repairs for the Strawbridge Parkway. Has that been fun or what, Jordan? Huh? And then election to receive state shared revenues. After that, we'll go to our report from the city manager. We'll round up the evening with our committee and council reports. Unless you're on council, then we get to have an executive session at the conclusion of tonight's meeting. With that, Jeff, would you like to call the roll, please?
Yes, Councilor Petzold.
Here.
Councilor Smallwood.
Here.
Councilor Sheldon.
Here.
Councilor Walker.
Here.
Councilor Exner.
Here.
Councilor Hokinson.
Here.
Mayor Pulliam.
Here. With that, is there any proposed changes to tonight's agenda?
The only thing I had was a question on one of the consent agenda items on the transit. Is Andy on the Zoom or anything?
Let's see. I don't see her at
I
the
saw
moment.
her as an attendee. Maybe I didn't. No.
And if she's not, I can just ask about it. We don't need to change the agenda. I'll ask about it.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, well, with that, let's move ahead to our public comment. Just to note that council will be taking public comment on the utility rate adjustments and amendments to SMC 8.35 during public hearings later in tonight's agenda. That said, the council welcomes any comments on matters at this time. If you're attending in meeting, please submit the sign-up sheets, which we've all gone through here tonight. If you're attending via Zoom, we have one person that did. That's been online comment sign-up sheet today before 3 o'clock. Let's go ahead and start with the online. I believe I see you, Andrea Culver. Jeff, if you would like to toggle her over. Andrea, what do we provide? I can't remember. Are we at 3 minutes or 5? 3 minutes. So we'll provide 3 minutes for public comment. Jeff will provide you with a 20-second warning. And please remember to state your name and address for the record. Welcome, Andrea.
Hi, thank you. My name is Andrea Culver and I live at 35534 Southeast Bluff Road. My comment tonight is about Sandy considering to rejoin the proposed Bull Run water filtration plant by the Portland Water Bureau. Currently, this plant has not been approved. I'm part of a community-wide organization that is prepared to fight this proposed plant through land use application, LUBA, and even to the Oregon Supreme Court if necessary. Our organization is just one of a number that are united in our opposition to PWB's proposal. The proposed land does not meet current community standards, is on agriculture land, and will seriously impair or decimate the local farmers and nurseries' ability to continue operating their businesses and navigate already congested and failing roadways. What started out as a $300 to $500 million project has now skyrocketed to $1.5 billion. It will only increase as supply and fuel prices continue to soar. Does Sandy want to sign up the residents to pay a percentage of such a huge bill after raising their water bills so much already? With significant opposition and inevitable legal battles, PWB will not be able to meet their September 2027 deadline, drawing out Sandy's timeline as well. Please know that if you sign up to be part of the proposed filtration plant, you will be opening yourselves up to the same legal delays and opposition that the Portland Water Bureau is facing. I strongly encourage Sandy to look at other options and develop a contingency plan to meet federal drinking water requirements separate from the PWB. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for your time this evening. With that, why don't we go to our in-person testimony? Paul, you're welcome to come up to the podium. Please remember to state your name and address for the record. Jeff will provide you with a 20-second warning, just so council has a head up. I have allowed leeway. We're reading a letter. I was asked tonight to have two people go at 3 minutes each and read the letter, or just consolidate it into one. I thought, you know what, let's consolidate it. So we're going to go with a 6-minute testimony. Jeff, will you provide a 20-second?
Who are the two people that are being
So I
represented
have
by the
two.
point?
Yeah, so it's Jeff Willis, who joins us here this evening, as well as John Edmondson, who's here and ready to provide us with the additional 3 minutes if we need it. Please. Paul, welcome.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah.
And I'll get my track shoes on and here we go. I'd like to talk about Sandy's water rates and the Portland Water Bureau's filtration plant. In the June 6th meeting, the council revisited how they would proceed in obtaining an additional water supply to meet future needs, as new cost information was then available. It was voted to obtain some of Sandy's water supply from the new Portland Water Bureau's proposed plant located on Carpenter Lane by running a new pipeline from Sandy to the filtration plant so that water quality standards could be met by September 2027. And new costing information indicated that this would be the most cost-effective path. It seems that this decision was predicated on three things. One, it was the most cost-effective. Two, the proposed filtration plant would be built. And three, the filtration plant would be built in time for Sandy to meet the September 27 completion date. Let's look at these three items: cost effectiveness. In 2018, the Portland Water Bureau got the filtration plan approved by the City of Portland's council at a price tag of $350 million. And soon after that, said they forgot to include the cost of the new water pipes to the tune of $200 to $300 million. Currently, the cost of the plan is estimated to be $1.4 billion without including escalation. The final cost could approach or exceed $2 billion. The increase will be passed on to Sandy and other wholesale customers. And wholesale customers are leaving Portland Water Bureau because of the rate hikes. As mentioned in your June 6th meeting, it is hard to pin down Portland Water Bureau on costs that you will be ultimately paying. Portland Water Bureau has or will eliminate their minimum gallons per day requirement, but they have to cover their costs. So it is most likely from a business perspective that they cannot give you a fixed cost over 20 to 30 years. There's going to be some small print that allows them to do adjustments. Gresham was going to have to pay the Bureau, Portland Water Bureau, $100 million toward the new plant if they stayed a wholesale customer. So they opted out. Has Sandy been asked to pay such a requirement, and has this been figured into your cost analysis? The Sandy water rate increases presented in the June 6th meeting, if I figured right, were about 500% over 5 years from 2022 to 2027. This is putting a lot of monetary pressure on the Sandy residents, and this will be ever increasing. The second item, filtration plant will be built. The talk at the June 6th meeting was that the plant will be built, and your actions were predicated on this assumption. I would ask, have you done a risk and probability analysis to determine what the risk and probabilities are in the plant being or not being built? The plant does not have land use approval from Multnomah County for construction, and currently the plant cannot be built. Multnomah County may deny Portland Water Bureau's request for conditional use approval. What then? What is Sandy's backup plan for its residents? Should Sandy wait to see if the plant will be built before signing any long-term agreement with Portland Water Bureau? Lastly, plant built in time to meet September 2027 compliance date. Sandy needs Portland Water Bureau to meet the September date. If they do not, Sandy does not. Portland Water Bureau schedule is tight, and they have not even completed their facility design to submit to Multnomah County for land use approval. Schedule slip is occurs in the best conditions. If Portland Water Bureau slip behind, they likely will get a slap from OHA or EPA. But if Sandy slips, they will probably have to pay a fine until Portland Water Bureau completes the project and connects Sandy. And connecting Sandy to the plant may not be their highest priority. Again, where is the risk analysis that the plant will even be completed on time? We want Sandy to have reasonable price, reliable water source. Are we heading in that direction? Thank you.
So much. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time this evening. We will be going to one more public testimony. One thing I did want to remind everyone of is that council does have our council comments at the end of our meeting, where a lot of this stuff will sometimes get brought up after public testimony. We also have a section on our agenda for reactions to public testimony at our next meeting. You would be hearing that tonight if we had public testimony at our last meeting. We just didn't, but those are two things to maybe keep a watchful eye on. But thank you so much for your public testimony tonight. Chris Verley? Yes, Verley. Just a reminder, 3 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record.
Chris Verley. I live at 18800 Southeast Langenson Road in Sandy. I also work here in Sandy. I don't necessarily oppose the wastewater hikes, other than that I question where we came up with the numbers. I haven't had an opportunity to review the O&M budget for wastewater as of yet, but I do know that Gresham has chose to drill new wells rather than to tie into the filtration systems. I do know that the average cost to drill a well per foot is about $125 here in the Portland metro area, which is minuscule in comparison to the budget you guys are proposing for wastewater. I would like the opportunity to volunteer my time to the city. I'm a former water treatment plant operator in a small community in Eastern Oregon, where we had a dire facility and situation similar to the outdated stuff you have here at your city. And I was able to bring that to current drinking water standards in a year's time with minimal costs. So with that being said, you have my information. I'm more than happy to volunteer my time to help the city look at alternative methods and also look at maybe off-grid sanitation that for the apartment complexes that are being built on a regular basis that turn the waste into drinkable water that can be used for irrigation, that doesn't put additional, monies against the water sourcing. So water's becoming more and more scarce west of the Mount Hood. It's only going to get worse. And I would suggest that maybe the city looks at alternative construction methods rather than to tax on additional costs to the community. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you for your public testimony tonight. That's our public testimony for this evening. We'll move ahead. We don't have any responses to last week's, as I mentioned. Where's my agenda? All right.
So we had written testimony also
Did we?
from the mountain cleaners.
We did.
Oh,
Not
well,
about the cleaners.
no, you're talking from the mat. the,
Laundromat, excuse me.
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll bring that up in the hearing.
Staff.
Nothing enter it into the record as a public
Yeah.
comment towards.
All right. With that, let's move ahead to our consent agenda. Unless there's discussion on it, I'll also entertain a motion.
I move we accept the consent agenda as it is written.
For a second.
Second it.
So motion by Counselor Exner, a second by Counselor Walker to adopt the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye or give me a thumbs up.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, or a thumbs down. Motion carries. Moving ahead into old business. I will open the public hearing. Resolution number 2022-15 at 7:22 here on June 21st. Jordan and Tyler, you have a staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. So at the work session on June 6th, we presented a number of fee adjustments like we do on an annual basis. This year, we sort of have the unfortunate scenario of having an economy that has high inflation, rising construction costs, the need to increase personnel costs to keep up with inflation, the fact of delays in construction because of supply chain issues, and a whole host of other things that are circling around there as a result of pandemic, world events, and other things going on. Locally here in Sandy, we're also confronted with two major construction projects for our water and our wastewater, which are mandated by our state and federal regulators, both which need to be completed within 5 years. At the same time, we operate a utility, SandyNet, that is unique for a municipality, but is also subject to these other drivers, such as increase in technology and equipment, and components that are shipped from overseas, so that we can provide lightning fast internet. So every year we bring a proposal to council for usually increasing our rates and fees to keep pace with our rising costs and inflation, but also to be able to build our CIP plans and also avoid things that we've kind of run into in the past, where if we don't increase fees on an annual basis, it usually means larger rate increases as we move forward to keep pace with those rising costs. Council adopted a couple goals this past biennium to plan and provide sustainable infrastructure, knowing that we have these large water and wastewater projects and transportation projects on the horizon and underway. And then also to maintain financial strength and sustainability, which, kind of the things I talked about over the last 2 years, the pandemic have been influenced, but it's still a goal to look at our revenue sources and our revenue streams and cost recovery as well. I mentioned these projects that we're facing down that require a lot of money, mostly debt financing. The city does not have, as a small municipality, we don't have a lot of cash on hand to complete capital projects. So most of our projects are funded either through grants or loans, such as the SRF loans or the WIFIA loans and state grants. But also when needed, revenue bonds or full faith and credit bonds, which we have done in recent years for transportation projects, but also looking at it for our water projects as well. And as the mayor kind of mentioned earlier, that we've been dealing with stormwater issues with all the rains and a utility that's been very under invested in with our stormwater utility. So we're proposing a small increase in that utility to help us kind of modernize our stormwater system, but also be able to fund these projects that are happening as we speak with sinkholes and broken pipes. And then finally, we propose some increases, modest increases in our planning and building department to help us achieve that goal of cost recovery for the operations, to take in permits and plan reviews and process subdivision applications, which are taking more and more of our time, not just with our staff here in City Hall, but also legal fees when a lot of these developments now come with attorneys and possible appeals too. So on the wastewater rates, this is the proposed rates for both the base and the volume charges. This is per our rate model, which is a 10% increase across all classes. This was based on our rate model that we've been updating on at least a biannual basis as we get more information about our construction costs and our proposed capital plan for that project. On the water and treatment projects, the last meeting of the council reconsidered the decision to construct our own treatment plant and instead build the transmission pipeline to the city of Portland's proposed filtration plant. That is our current direction. And that project showed that it was considerably less over the life cycle of that project to connect to the new filtration plant, which we're under the same mandate as the city of Portland to treat or have treated the Bull Run water supply by 2027. At the same time, we're in the middle of a master plan update for our water utility, and we need significant investments in the Alder Creek water treatment plant, which will help us buy less Portland water by expanding and remodeling our Alder Creek supply. And we also have a reservoir that needs some assistance. So the assumptions when we built in the rate model is looking at the last couple of years, we want to make sure that we are including enough inflation and escalating factors in those project costs so that we don't have to come back to council asking for more money, which tends to be the case in public projects. So we built in about a 6% escalation per year in the CIP. And on top of that, we've added a 35% contingency, given that we have not even started design on the pipeline and the host of unknowns on things like schedule and things that come up during the design process. So there's a large contingency at this point, and that escalation. And then for funding, the model assumes an SRF loan, half of it being paid by SRF and half of it through a revenue bond. As we've seen with the wastewater project, we've been very successful in getting state and federal grants and also the WIFIA loan. And so we'll be looking at this similar funding plan for water. I think we're working on getting a meeting scheduled with Business Oregon to look at the different opportunities with the SRF loans with water and some of the forgivable loans as part of that. So our hope is that as we get the funding plan sort of nailed down, future rate increases can possibly start to come down as more money is sort of identified. So the capital improvement program, you see it kind of similar to the wastewater. We ramp up as we start design, as we start some of these smaller projects compared to the transmission line. So the Alder Creek and reservoir replacements, and then the bulk of the CIP investments will happen as we get closer to that 2027 deadline. And to fund all that, as you see a similar wave here, we need to raise a lot of funds and cover a lot of debt payments to go from, a current debt service of, what are we at, Tyler? Less than $1 million, all the way up to over $7 million that we need to cover with customer rates. And this is a very similar model that if some of you might remember from wastewater, is that when we go out to get revenue bonds or SRF loans, that we need to cover that debt, which usually kicks in depending on how we model that debt a few years after we pull that debt. And those bonds or those loans require us to have a certain amount of debt coverage, meaning we need to have revenue that covers at least the debt payments plus extra cushion on top of that. And this process will as you know, we go through rating agencies to get, a rating on that debt, which can also influence the rates. Interest rates are obviously changing in real time, basically right now. So again, these models are updated fairly frequently, at least, a couple times a year, we go through the exercise of updating the rate model. So under the current model, as you probably tell, the numbers have already changed as we look at the out years, as we keep refining those numbers as much as we can to get a better picture as more information comes in. But we're proposing that 41% increase, which is about a $12 to $15 increase for the average residential customer. And then the future increases are really just projections at this point, again, likely to change like they already have. And so this is a 41%. It would be across both the volume, the meter charges, and then the base rate. And so sample bill, you see that for the average customer who pays about $30 a month right now would go to $42. We included the medium household income as a percent there. This is something that we keep an eye on as it comes, actually becomes relevant when we're looking at things like the WIFIA loan. There's a certain threshold the EPA has that wants us as a guidance for affordability. So that calculation is kind of run in the back. And the affordability threshold, I think for both wastewater and water rates is 4.5% combined. So we're still under that, under both. We're under this scenario with both water and wastewater.
So the next 3 years, the average single family needs to come up with $50 more a month.
Under the current projections. And again, our goal is to drive that down. And like for wastewater, kind of go back to that point I made earlier about projections. When we started the wastewater program, the majority of that rate model was funded by revenue bonds. And to date, we haven't even pulled one. So, it's been funded by grants, the WIFIA loan, SRF loans, which really drove down picture for future rate increases. For the stormwater utility, as I mentioned before, we're proposing a modest increase of just $1.50 per month. This will help build a capital fund for some of these projects that we know are lying underneath our pavement for stormwater pipe repairs and culverts and things like that. There is a need to do a master plan for that utility. It's one of our newest utilities that was established originally for basically one project to help with stormwater management, Meinig Park. And that utility basically just collects the $350 to pay for the debt service for that project. But now we need to start pivoting towards, investing in the assets that we've already built and are starting to deteriorate, like the 48-inch pipeline that collapsed last weekend. So here's a snapshot of our historic and also projected average bill with these proposed rates with water, sewer, and stormwater. Again, Sandy's a little bit unique that we have SandyNet. And if you're a SandyNet customer, which I think about 80% of households in Sandy now are, you have the SandyNet bill on your utility bill, which is a good and bad thing for us because it makes the water and wastewater bill look larger than it is, but also it's very convenient, easy for us, keeps our costs low administratively, and easy for residents to pay all their city fees in one bill.
I get why it's on this chart. I mean, we talk about it all the time, how it's kind of a utility, but the truth is unless I go and start buying tons of bottles of water, I can't get away from any of these other charges, right? But I can get away from the SandyNet charge or go find an alternative provider. I don't know. It just feels like it maybe doesn't belong here, but I understand why it is.
I think people online frequently confuse the numbers when they start citing their own bills. So I think it's important.
That makes
to
sense.
Remember,
because it's on the same thing.
Sure, they could have a gig service or something, so it's different. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it could be argued either way because some people say, no, it's on my bill, therefore it's a city charge, and that's why the public safety fee is shown there too. And when we do comparisons, we kind of look at other fees that may be on a bill too. This doesn't reflect SandyNet on there when we look at comparisons, but other cities have like a street light fee or may have a street maintenance fee. Other cities also have a public safety fee. So we included that in the comparison. on where we would stand against other Clackamas County cities. And so with these proposed rate adjustments, Sandy kind of stays in the middle, but moves up on the upper end of the middle as opposed to the lower. So it's also a pretty easy way to see the average customer will see about a $20 a month increase with these proposed fees. And then how we compare to kind of some of the other cities. This does, of course, doesn't include data that we don't know yet, what other cities are proposing for their fees and charges. This was based on a survey from a couple months ago, so I'm sure a couple of these have already changed. Some cities adopt fees on the fiscal year, some cities adopt fees on the calendar year, and then implement them either on the calendar or fiscal year.
And some of these have districts, and it's not by the city.
Yeah,
It's a
and those are
district,
pulled
say like
in.
Happy Valley. for
Yeah, and
instance.
those are pulled in for the comparison though. So like Clean Water Services or Sunrise Water District are reflected if they're a part of those districts. But those are a factor when it comes down to who do you get a bill by, and we are our own water utility, but a lot of cities may have a bill that's only for stormwater or only for a public safety fee or something, whereas we're the only game in town except for PG and Northwest Natural when it comes to utilities to your household. On the Sandy Net, the proposal here was a $3 increase that would be implemented in July as well. Our main driver for this is really the equipment and the technology. We're about almost a decade into fiber to the home and a point of equipment needing to be replaced, new modems and routers. And the rising costs of that technology. I think if you try to order a computer now, it takes a couple months versus a couple years ago, be there, Amazon Prime the next day. So we're up against those same forces to maintain competitiveness and make sure we can connect our customers and keep them humming along at gig speeds. It's part of this package.
Well, I'll notice though, that you use the old marketing trick, 95 cents instead of rounding up to 45 to 60, but you don't do that for any of my other utility bills to make me feel better about.
Could do that.
Okay.
Then there's a metered.
Which way
Yeah.
am I going?
Yeah.
Round down? Are you around down?
Yeah, right.
Round down. Yeah.
Yes, we were talking about.
Yeah, right. Sorry.
Yeah. So as part of the Sandy Net proposal, though, we would increase fees on the 300 megabit service with that 44.95 and increase it up to 500. We're also proposing a new package of options for new developments where we're deploying. So the 2 gig service up and down and the 5 gig service up and down for 110 and 225. We don't expect a lot of folks would opt into that, but we have that capability with new technology to be able to offer those type of speeds. And we know more and more people are working from home and may have multiple people working from home and maybe graphic designers working from home, and they might actually want the 2 gig service or maybe the 5, especially if their kids are watching Netflix at the same time. And then finally, just a couple other adjustments to mention. Since the planning and building was basically across the board in a lot of different areas, I didn't really find an easy way to put that in a slide, but the attachment, I think the second attachment, or third attachment, that's red line. You can see those adjustments. At the June 6th meeting, we showed a comparison of where we currently are with our building and planning fees compared to where this will take us. It helps us kind of catch up with cost recovery, but ultimately that comparison chart showed that we have a long ways to go in recovering costs through increasing SDCs, which we're in the process of with the Parks SDCs. The water master plan will inform the water SDC and then the transportation SDCs as well. And then miscellaneous fees, Tyler, I think it was records fees to reflect our current costs.
Yep. As well as a slight change in the annual interest rate charge for
That's right.
monies owed to the city. I will add one thing in regards to building fees. State law does require us to notice the state building division when we're going to increase building fees. That notice was met, all the timelines were met there, and we received no public comment through that noticing form. So you're all aware of that.
So, it's never never fun having to come with rate increases. We recognize that, especially all the conditions that I talked about with inflation and gas prices and everything. We operate a water and wastewater business that has to have our assets invested in. We're up against the possibility of potentially water shortages if we don't build a pipeline or build a treatment plant. And we're under a tight timeline, as Jenny presented at the last council meeting, to start the engineering and start the work on this project at the same time. We're in the middle of a massive wastewater investment to comply with our environmental regulations and permits. And we're continuing to explore every option for bringing down those costs and every alternatives that we can treat our water and possibly put our water that's been treated so that we can keep those costs as low as possible. We're just in the cycle of growth here in Sandy, where our infrastructure is aged beyond their useful life, and we've outgrown it over the years. And we're in this period where we need to invest, whether we want to or not, when we have state and federal regulators requiring us to do it. These rate adjustments then would become effective if passed tonight, July 1st. And so customers would see the new rates incorporated into the bills starting in July. Obviously, the timing is when people start to use water. So the timing, in the past, we've looked at alternatives such as starting those rate increases in the wintertime when we go back to winter averaging. So you don't have the kind of drop and then bump, it kind of levels it out a little bit more. That is an option, and we can plug that through the rate model. The issue that we're up against is, sort of the immediate needs that we identified to start the work on the treatment plant and reservoirs and start collecting increased rates in order to start funding those projects. And so, I think the last thing for council is questions and discussing these, and then holding a public hearing and then adopting the rates.
Where are we at on the fund we put together the last time for assistance for folks that need it? How well is it funded? And
so it's actually just a discount program. And I think you see that in the master fees and charges under wastewater. What we want to do is then take that program and move that across so that it also is for water and an income assistance program. I think we have 20 or 30? 39 now. 39 households are part of that program. And then Greg has been working on options for SandyNet as well. Either another tier of service or a discount program that the water, or like the wastewater and soon to be water program.
And then there was an issue with our multi-family type residences.
Yeah. And I think that issue kind of still, so we haven't modified the program.
We
yet.
charge the owner and they have a hard time divvying it up and figuring that out.
Many of those residents don't pay the bill to the city. The property owner is divvying it up between the 18, units or whatever that are on that site.
Mm-hmm. The one thing I'd say, and I'll questions is that continues to be, I'll have property owners approach me in the community and, really feel heavily that this is kind of the last housing situation before, homelessness or different things. And so I don't know the answer to it, right? But just keep looking.
I got a couple questions. So first one is, I noticed that the public safety fee did not go up at all. And am I assuming that there are no increased fees in the police station so police can handle all the financing that they have now?
Yeah, I mean, our thinking on that was we will, as the ordinance sort of outlines, is that we would bring it back to the budget committee each biennium for review, and probably as part of the proposed budget have a proposal for an increase. And really what we want to do is take a look at where that public safety fee is in covering the costs that it set out to do.
Okay.
Because we're adding customers every year, right? So $450 a month with new customers, you can kind of keep up a little bit, but like everything else, we're probably starting to see a little gap open up between the cost of officers and how much we collect in the biennium for the public safety.
I know it was a few years back that we were really struggling with trying to keep up with the costs of the police. And I don't want to get so far behind, we end up having to do some of the things we've said we weren't going to do, which is to make large increases. So as long as we're staying close and you're monitoring that. Okay. Another question I have, we've talked about this in the past, but I'm not sure this is the time to implement it now, but I want to see if this is on our radar at all about conservation use of our utilities. So where we don't put extra water, stormwater, that kind of stuff into the system, we somehow recognize our citizens' ability to manage that well. For example, about a third of my water doesn't go through the system, it goes into a ponding system in my property. So I'm just wondering if we've had a chance to think about how we might be able to look at conservation, where that might look. I know we have some of the rainwater barrels and a few other things that we are able to put out, shower heads and that kind of thing. But I'm thinking about, the same thing that the mayor brought out about subsidies. Maybe we can find a way to be more conservative.
Yeah.
with our
We've
utilities.
started pushing those messages more, and it's a delicate balance of we're increasing rates, you should use less water, but you also should use less water because Oregon's finding itself in a drought more and more, well, not this spring. And looking at things that other agencies like the Water Consortium provides. We've done things like the shower heads and measures for your lawn, for watering your lawn and things like that. So we are, working on a public education campaign with water conservation as part of this. The idea is like tonight about reuse of water and like the purple pipe systems and stuff. I think we should definitely be looking at that in terms of all the new developments that are going in and stuff, especially if we can, as a city, but also encourage new developments in private property use to keep their lawns green, but water with recycled water as opposed to or gray water as opposed to city water. It I think is a great place to look. And so, I think welcome the council's direction on taking that on too. And there's other programs that we can look at with water conservation. Like Jenny has dived into, like I said, the Water Providers Consortium or the water.
There's a water conservation master plan we have adopted that we have to update every year, and it talks exactly about those things: education, zero escaping, recycled water, reclaimed water, the shower heads. And so we'll be looking at that as a comprehensive way to move forward because it benefits everyone. So
Sure.
only use what we need to.
Some things are just pretty easy to do. The shower head thing, I've got very limited shower head. In fact, I got a shower twice as long because it's so limited anymore. But things about, do I smell bad? Okay, I get that part. All right.
It's a problem.
We'll talk about that in council meeting. Okay. But the other part about it is somehow an incentive for folks to be able to say, I'm trying to do my best to conserve water. We're talking about having to deal with all this wintertime water. Maybe there's a way people can put them into storage until the summertime and then use this recycle system. A barrel doesn't seem to do an awful lot. I've tried that and 50 gallons or so, and it doesn't last all summer. But there may be other ways.
Yeah, and Counselor, your other efforts like pollinator gardens and things like that, that definitely helps is the communication around, you can have a beautiful yard it's Northwest species, native, species of plants and things. And a huge driver of conservation actually for cities is when water rates go up, because that is something that people can do in their homes, take shorter showers, wash the dishes more effectively, don't run the sink when you brush your teeth, simple things like that, but it adds up, especially when you have a volume charge that's going up each year. There's a financial incentive to, keep your volume down or drive it down. So.
Kathleen? Sorry, Carl.
No, I'm done. I just want to say, you'll hear more about that from me as we go.
I'm sure there are already developed programs and PowerPoints or advertising or whatever on how to save water in the home that we could link to in different, in our water bills and our social media and things like that. And so I'd really like us to see, kind of get that out with Bill so that we can try to encourage that. The other thing, I had a couple questions. Are we pursuing the water, the funding, outside funding? So what I've heard is that with sewage rates, we've got a lot of other money that we're going to be using so that we don't think that we're going to have to make these future increases as much because we'll have funding from outside sources. Is that right?
The model still, so the 10% increases, it's the most recent model that also has built in the $14.7 million grant, with the loan up to, I think, like 76 million, the SRF funding and all that. So that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But with the water, what I heard was that we don't have, what my question is, what are we doing to kind of help secure some additional funding for these water improvements?
Well,
and I don't know if it's Jordan or Jen.
We both can.
sorry.
Go ahead. Come on up. Actually, if you want to come
Yeah, the mic.
up.
One of the things we're going to do is hire a program manager to help secure this. There's many other grants in, because obviously we want the grants and best loans we can get, and that takes staff time and knowledge and relationships. There are a lot of options in water, but the first part is to hire people. We are going to submit a letter of interest to SRF September 15th. We'll be ready. And that's one viable option, but in terms of resiliency, there's a number of other grant programs I'd like to go after, including BRIC grants, but we're in the process of moving along. And to answer your other question, the Regional Water Consortium provider, they have just a wonderful social media campaign, also in additional languages. We just went through a 4-hour tabletop exercise. And so our messaging is consistent with the many different water providers in the whole state of Oregon. And we have been doing a Water Wednesday campaign to educate on all these different issues, because it is really important and interesting.
I just have one other question. Do any other communities, and this is a little controversial, but do any other ones charge new home? I get that we do with the SDCs and all, and maybe that all comes out in the end, but do any other communities have higher water sewer rates for new homes than for old existing residences?
Not to my knowledge. I'm not sure how you would do that, and you'd be challenged by an equity argument.
I don't mean to interrupt, but that goes to a question I was going to ask too, which is, so my understanding is we can't discriminate on the rate, meaning like we can't do age 65 and up, we can't do fixed income. I mean, what can we do on the rate?
Probably, like you did with the income assistance program, you could probably do you can look at maybe a senior discount sort of program, but again, you probably want to have other criteria, because you can have folks that are over the age of 65 or whatever number that are actually quite wealthy.
But fundamentally, we can't charge Jeff a different rate. We charge me.
No. What the way, I guess, other models that you can look at is like, the more you use, the more you pay. So if new homes are bigger, they're probably using more water.
So
But
if you have a tiered rate.
yeah.
That's,
So in Gresham, it's not a tiered rate. I don't want to spend too much on this. I only know this as a homeowner there, not because I speak with their finance department often, but my development has larger homes. And so there's a larger main line that comes into the hydrant. So the base fee in my neighborhood is larger than that of a colder neighborhood in Gresham, where the homes are smaller. Over time, that $15 a month or whatever it is adds up among multiple properties paying in. So it's something that we could do some additional research on.
Yeah,
If you could do it like how old the home is, but then it doesn't necessarily mean you have a new resident in that. I don't know.
yeah, you got big
it's just the
old homes, you got
Age of the
small
home.
new homes. You'd have to look at it in terms of like what Tyler was talking about, how big your piping is, or maybe how many square feet of lawn you have, or something that's measurable. Right? And something that would be easy to do, and I don't know what's legal too.
Why would I didn't go to UW. I mean, I am curious, like, what our flexibility with the rate is. You know, I mean, as far as what we're able to charge. I mean, to Dawn's point, my understanding is you can't, you got to charge Jeff, but you're going to charge Dawn. But there's also some different discount plans, and I feel like our rates getting to the point with everything else going on in the world where we're going to be wanting to think of additional ways to help out our ratepayers. So, sorry, I don't want. But
Go ahead.
No, I think, to Stan's point, I think it depends on, I think what Jordan is trying to say is you got to look at what's the demographic you're trying to help. Because I think it's two different things. If you're looking to go and so hardly say, make development pay for itself. So the bigger the development, the more infrastructure it's going to require, probably the larger pipe, right? Pay for itself, it moves that way. That's one model. But if you're looking to help more from a socioeconomic status, I feel like we already have that. And there's probably some room for improvement on that for sure. But I think those are two different ways of looking at it.
Well, I think where I was going with that was that the folks that have lived here for a long time generally have paid in. And I don't believe that the SDCs are able to capture the true cost of all the investment we've made over the years, if you've lived here 20 years, in all the infrastructure that we have. And so that's where I kind of go by the age of the home. And when you have these new homes, yes, there were some SDCs, you know, a charge to that, but is it possible to kind of have those differentiating charges based on the age of the home to reflect the fact that they're kind of getting in on the coattails of the folks that have been paying for the infrastructure for 20 years. That's my point.
well, I want to see if there's a response.
Well, I mean, honestly, it's a great policy discussion. You can have the counter argument that at least in a lot of, in Sandy, over 100 years old, infrastructure was cheaper when it was originally built. There was a lot of federal funding or state dollars that went towards some of these projects. It was also cheaper to build, labor costs and everything. So, older homes actually had a discount compared to newer residents that are paying more of a premium for infrastructure nowadays. So you can actually flip that around. And perhaps they underpaid into the system for what they've been using for all these years compared to people moving in with high costs, new big projects, expansion projects, and things like that.
Let's go, Don, Carl, and German.
So I'm going to say some very unpopular things with probably most everybody who's going to be hitting the pocketbook, but I'm going to speak on behalf of the aging wastewater pipes, the aging freshwater system, the aging and collapsing stormwater system. As someone who's spent a number of years of my career in asset management is, as I posted on my Facebook account, you can defer an oil change on your car to save money, but it's going to cost you down the road. Ultimately, your cost per mile is going to be fixed. And with Jenny and the review she's done on our various systems, we are faced with a whole lot of maintenance that got kicked down the road for a long time. And we don't have a lot of choices because it's been kicked so far. We've got collapsing roads. We've got deadlines that are coming. We don't have a lot of flexibility to say, well, this isn't a good time. We should put off changes for a year or two. And while I'm not opposed to looking at help for those who need it, the amount of money we have to raise to hit these capital plans doesn't change. So if we need to help somebody, it's at the cost of somebody else. And let's not lose sight of that or fool ourselves to thinking we're just going to reduce these rates. If we reduce rates, we're not going to fix the systems and get them in place and potentially risking not having the water we need or not meeting our compliance or having Big Brother come down and take our choices away from us in some areas. So for me, this is a tough pill to swallow, but I think we've got to do it. And if we can restructure it a little better to, that makes everybody happy, that's great. But we've got to raise these funds so that we can move ahead with these projects immediately.
Yeah, I'm just going to say ditto for Councilman Hokanson, because I think that's the same essence that I was thinking about too. There is one thing, I was in the consortium for a while myself, and there is a certain amount of study that says that as people conserve, then the monies that come in from utility rates reduced, and suddenly you don't have the money to be able to pay for your utility, construction, maintenance, and all those sorts of things. So there's a place in there where you start losing your ability to take care of things. So being able to reduce people's utility prices has a certain cost to it. And like I said, I don't want to repeat what Councilman Hopkinson said too. I just think it's important that I think in the main, we got to go forward with these things. There is no way to stop this. The only thing I can see is that we probably should continue to look at every possible solution, every possible counter alternative that we can make before we spend up these millions and millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. So with that, I'll stay quiet.
Yeah, no, I actually, Don jumped in and said exactly what I was going to say. Basically, same thing. If we were to have a 50% of the population that gets to, pay lower, even though, it tugs at our hearts and these type of things, someone else needs to pay for that to be there. These rates didn't come up just because it was, throwing at a dartboard and seeing that. It was, what does it need to be to get there? And so we have these rate increases year after year, but if we delay any of them or a percentage of them, it just pushes that back, let alone being able to start that where we know the cost in future years of construction and everything is going to be more than it is today. We already know that everyone knows that now with inflation just being so high as it is today. But we've got to be careful that we don't delay that percentage now, because the next one will just need to be higher and we'll have lost on the compounding of the fund coming in. So we have just keep that in mind as well.
Let's move forward in the public testimony. Agree with all that was said. The one thing I would just say is you always have to go get the money, but there's always progressive taxes or some different ways you divvy up on who you take it from and why and all that. So there's always kind of say nuance a lot tonight, for some reason. All right, let's get into public testimony. Here's your instructions. Please try to avoid repetition if someone else has already expressed the same thoughts. It is sufficient to state that you agree with the statements of a previous speaker, even if that's all you say. For those joining us in person this evening, please raise your hand to indicate you would like to speak and wait to be recognized. If you're participating online, click the raise hand button and wait to be recognized. If you're participating via telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand and wait to be recognized. I'll call on each person when it's their turn to speak. Each participant will receive up to 3 minutes to testify. The city recorder will let you know when you have 20 seconds remaining. Our city council rules do require each person to state their name and address for the record. I will now call for any testimony on the proposed resolution. We provided 3 minutes.
Mayor, I don't see any hands raised in the room. I'll take a look for any hands raised online. And Mayor, I do not see any raised hands.
All right, Jordan Tyler, staff recap and recommendation.
Council, we recommend the council adopts resolution 2215. And just as the recap from the council conversation, Tyler and I will pursue expanding the income assistance program, but I've taken notes on, is there other models to look at in our rate structures for water and wastewater, looking at class rates, meter sizes, other criteria that we may be able to use to spread the rates differently than as they're currently structured.
Thank you. Jeff, please make sure that our meeting minutes do reflect submitted public testimony.
Cedar's laundromat.
Yep, Cedar's laundromat.
And we'll do that.
Thank you. So with that, I will now call for a motion that close the public hearing.
Make motion to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilor Peatsold to close the public hearing. There's been a second by Councilor Exner. All those in favor signify by saying aye or provide me with a thumbs up. Aye. Opposed, nays or thumbs down. Motion carries. This public hearing is now closed at 8:05 on June 21st. There's been plenty of discussion. Is there any more discussion, or I can entertain a motion?
Yeah, hey, just real quick. Just so nobody's surprised, I'm voting no on this one. With, you know, I would like to see us just refrain. I hear all the arguments and I completely concur with a aging system. You know, we've all been part of this process for several years. However, currently with a 9% inflation rate, increasing gas prices daily almost, one of the highest tax states, you know, this is a real burden on people. And, you know, this continual rate hike, which we knew was coming, it's no surprise, but I'm more in favor of waiting and holding off for even a short period of time, even if we look at it, you know, on a month-by-month basis or every few months. But just so none of you are surprised, I'm not voting in favor for rate hikes at this juncture.
Thank you, Counselor. All right, that's discussion. We're still open for discussion and questions, so unless there's a motion to move forward.
I move to adopt resolution 2022-15, a resolution amending the city's master fees and charge schedule.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion by Counselor Exner and a second by Counselor Hokinson to adopt the master fee schedule. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Or thumbs up. Opposed, nays.
Nay.
Counselor Small with the nay. All right, motion carries. Moving ahead in the agenda, public hearing for the repeal and replacement of the Sandy Municipal Code. I will open this public hearing 2022-12 at 8:07 p.m. on June 21st. Jordan, go ahead with the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. So tonight we're asking the council to do a repeal and replace of chapter 8.35, which is camping prohibited. So this would adopt a new code, new chapter 8.35, camping prohibited in certain places. Some background on this topic. We held a work session back in November, I believe, where we introduced some topics and some potential proposed language for a new camping ordinance. The important points here is that we currently have a camping code that is unconstitutional. Recent court cases and case law, and then this House Bill 3115 that was adopted this last year has made Sandy's camping ordinance non-compliant. We have until I think a year, so July 2023, to adopt a new camping ordinance. But the council adopted a council goal this biennium to address homelessness in Sandy. And as part of that work, we looked at our existing ordinances and codes with Councilor Smallwood and Sheldon, and to see what we could do to help our police department and staff better protect the health, safety, and welfare of our residents, and look at some regulations that meet the criteria of time, place, and manner guidance for sleeping in public places in the city. This, as proposed, this ordinance would help us achieve that goal of regulating camping. I think it says camping there, but I should say camping, that damages the environment, and again impedes the public's use and enjoyment of our parks and other public property, and creates situations that are unsafe and unsanitary. And then on the other hand, it also gives our police department and our staff better guidance on what is allowed, and so they can better manage the situation, respond to calls for service, and then provide assistance to individuals that are experiencing homelessness and helping them access resources, referrals to shelters and other services in our area. Jumping right to it. So the regulations, so currently our code that's non-compliant, 8.35, is basically a blanket ban on camping, which again is not constitutional and needs to be replaced by 2023. So the new regulations would prohibit camping in all city parks, trails, and areas designated as parks and open space currently under Sandy Municipal Code. Any area that is a flood slope or hazard overlay area, and then any sidewalk, unless it can provide a continuous width of at least 5 feet. Furthermore, all city parking lots, city-owned parking lots, all real property. So city facilities would be the main use on real property. And then any area that's zoned for residential understanding municipal code title 17, and then any public property located basically in our downtown core. So that's between Proctor or along Proctor Avenue and Pioneer Avenue and Pleasant Street, between Bluff and Tenike. Per state law, camping is also prohibited along state highways. So Highway 26 would also not be allowed. That leaves where it would be allowed, commercial and industrial zones that public property within commercial industrial zones that otherwise do not conflict with any of the criteria that was just listed in those 7 points. And then sleeping would be allowed in those areas between 9 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. What's that?
AM, it's just
AM, did I say, oh, AM, sorry. And so staff is recommending the adoption of ordinance 2022-12, which is the repeal and replace. Emily Mattistar with Barry Elsner and Hammond is here tonight. She helped kind of provide the legal guidance. If you remember back in November, the work session, of course, Councilor Smallwood and Councilor Sheldon too played a big role in reviewing the proposed code language and helping develop this ordinance in the new language. So I'm sure they can help answer questions too. But that staff is recommending adopting the ordinance. And I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Everybody okay with me moving ahead to public testimony with questions at the end? Okay, perfect. All right, instructions for public testimony. Please try to avoid repetition if someone else has already expressed the same thoughts. It is sufficient to state that you agree with the statements of a previous speaker, even if that's all you say. For those joining us in person this evening, please raise your hand to indicate you would like to speak and wait to be recognized. If you're participating online, click the raised hand button and wait to be recognized. If you're participating via telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand and wait to be recognized. I'll call on each person when it's their turn to speak. Each participant will receive up to 3 minutes to testify. The city recorder will let you know when you have 20 seconds remaining. Our council rules do require each person to state their name and address for the record. I will now call on any testimony for this proposal. Just a reminder that you have 3 minutes and to state your name and address for the record.
Mayor, I don't see any hands raised here in the room. Taking a look online. And Mayor, I did not see any raised hands.
Right, Jordan, I'm sure you're still recommending it.
Yes, sir.
Great. I'm going to call for a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion, we close the public hearing on camping.
For a second. Motion by Councilor Walker, a second by Councilor Sheldon to close the public hearing. All those in favor signify by saying aye or provide me a thumbs up.
Aye.
Opposed, nays, or a thumbs down. Motion carries. I will close this public hearing at 8:14 p.m. on June 21st. Discussion, questions for staff? Well, there was a couple earlier. Yeah, right, yeah.
First of all, great job on all this. I really appreciate this coming together. The questions I had, and I know the state regulation does prohibit this, but I don't see anything mentioned in it, I don't think, about any kind of campfires ban or restrictions. Is that in there?
It's not defined, Emily, feel free to chime in, but it's not defined, I believe, in any of the definitions for camping or camp facilities. So I would assume that that's covered by
The state,
other
the
portions
state-
of Sandy Municipal
the
Code.
state said that if you can, I just remember the definition stuff, they allowed that campfires were prohibited or something like that.
Well, they're allowed to keep warm.
Yep.
Covered, right? So that's where tents and sleeping bags and things come in. But open flame, Emily, I'm not sure if that.
Yeah, I can chime in here. So it is not a requirement that the city allow campfires or fires on public property. So if the city doesn't regulate that elsewhere, I'm not sure. I'd have to look at your code. That is something that you could add into this this code section. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, there's limitations elsewhere, though.
Okay, and then the second question I had was, is there any allowance for, of course, the whole Boise versus V. Martin and stuff had to do with, when shelters are full and not available. And so what I'm just wondering is, if we have shelter space available in Gresham or Portland, is that and we know there's space available, is that adequate to restrict camping in Sandy? If we give them a bus ticket and, and a max ticket to get into that, into those shelters.
Yeah, we discussed this a lot
Okay.
in part of the committee. We got some legal advice on that. Where it stands now, I'm sure there's going to be more case law. There's a lot of cities adopting updated ordinances. And so we'll find out more about the limitations and what sort of how to define proximity and location of shelter space. I think what we wanted to do is at least get this in place and continue to work on it as, shelters open or we get more clarity on that.
I've asked with an you don't have a better.
No, so what I was gonna say though is, and Emily, please correct me if I'm wrong, this is what our code wasn't strictly not enforceable. So someone could be camping on our roadway or on our sidewalks or wherever, and there was literally nothing that they could do. This allows them tools to do something. As far as a proximity to a shelter, I think this is better than nothing for one. And then the second piece of that is, I think it's a really heavy haul to say, pick up all your stuff, here's a bus ticket, go into Portland, when the humane idea is that they're trying to get out of Portland to try to find something else. And so I think that's my opinion is, if the courts are saying this, that's gonna backfire on us harder than just saying, hey, you can't be anywhere here. Does that make sense?
Well, Rich, I certainly agree that the humane thing to do is to allow people out of Portland. For the record. My understanding is there's gonna take some lawsuits to figure it out, right? Like, we could say that we're close enough to alternatives overnight locations, but that's a very big gray area of, what is close enough and in our area. But yeah, all right, yeah. Carl.
So this isn't the most controversial conversation that I deal with on a weekly basis, but it gets pretty close to the top. And I'm really concerned about our commercial places where we do see a lot of complaints, a lot of concerns, people camping in the backsides of the businesses. At my business, we have people actually living in the dumpster because it's enclosed and hidden from view. So they go inside the rain and all that kind of stuff. So first question is was a commercial public ground, commercial, do we have to exclude that? Or have to allow that, excuse me, for camping? Can we exclude that? Is there a way to exclude that?
It's not all commercial.
It's
There are zones that are restricted. So that center corridor between 26 is restricted. Pleasant Street is restricted.
That's still on just public lands. That's not private
C1's
lands.
but we're talking public property, commercial. Right,
Well, if camping's happening on private property, you just call police.
right. That's kind of an easy one to
Yeah.
call, but if it's in front of the city,
So
if it's in the back of the city and not in the parking lot, I
Yeah.
get that part.
just to cut to it, basically what we have to do is we have to allow sleeping, unless we have shelter space, we have to allow sleeping somewhere in the city.
Sure.
So,
Industrial areas?
Yep.
You bet.
but if you, right, and so, but with all the other criteria of the 5-foot clearance, the amount of stuff you can have, and then the, not on Proctor, Pleasant, obviously Highway 26, limits the amount of commercial land that would be available for overnight sleeping as well.
if you get what I'm saying, Counselor. So
So is there, was there we have to have so many square feet in the city of Sandy that gives us a place for these folks to camp? We could limit it down to a certain place, and I understand the
it hasn't been litigated yet.
humane and all that kind of stuff. But again, it's one of those things that I hear more about than a lot of things.
And this gives us more tools now. If we get those calls, it's actually, our police can respond and say, you can't camp here, can camp, over here,
Sure, but I've also been aware of, I was in Meinig Park, where the officers were really having a struggle about figuring out how to move these folks along, because they did not want to go to, I think it was Bybee, and a place that we would be saying, that's your place to go. But because of the restrictions and limitations, so we're having struggles getting these folks moved. And I get the part, it's better than nothing, better than what we had before. I just want to see if there's a way to make it, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to see us becoming the auxiliary for Portland when traffic becomes difficult downtown Portland, people don't like what's going on, they move to Sandy.
Carl, the idea is though, is what you're saying is before they had no tools, because it was unlawful for them to essentially say you can't be here. Like there was no framework to operate within.
Got it, right.
And so now this is a step in trying to provide that framework. Does that make sense?
It
And
is.
parks are, correct me if I'm wrong, parks are one of the places they can't.
Yeah, and that was already.
That's how it always was.
Yeah.
Right, but before there was, again, we go back to that it was, our rules weren't good.
Right,
They were
right.
bad. And so this brings us into compliance. It's the first step to
And-
trying to work that way.
And a lot of these people are pretty informed about what the rules are, so I understand that they can talk the talk and make sure that they at least push back on our police officers fairly much. And so I just was looking to make sure that we didn't look at every possibility of limiting this. Now, I personally think that if there are people, if there's some folks that from our schools, from our relatives, from our neighbors, whatever, we should take care of our own. But I'm going to push a little bit and say that this is one of those things where people I know don't like to see this kind of stuff in our city.
I think this is a very strong step in not having a lot of that in our city.
I get that part. I'm just trying to determine if we've made this as tight as we can. And I get the part about industrial areas. It's probably, if we gotta find a spot, it's probably a spot. Don?
The question was raised about fire pits. Under 83610, we do prohibit outdoor burning except in a fireplace, barbecue set, or outdoor fire pit, and then only under those windows when the fire department says it's allowable. So there's another set of code if somebody were burning and it was in the wrong time of year or in an unsafe manner. That was the first point. Second point, this may not be the perfect set of ordinance, but it seems like we shouldn't let good get in the way of perfect.
Perfect get in the way of good.
Yes. We should probably move ahead and
You're
put
kicking
this
that-
in
and you're
place.
kicking that can
Let's
down
not
the
kick that
road,
can
Don.
anymore.
All right.
And the rules, just point out, keep changing on this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So this
we'll
is
be
not
doing-
that they
we'll
were
be
bad
talking again.
before, they were better than they were before those, it's just we are being dictated to.
Yeah.
Exactly right. All
But-
right. Go ahead, Lori. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add, Rich might be hearing or seeing some of this too, but we just want to make sure we get ahead of this. You know, I agree with what Carl's saying. I think this is a really good ordinance. It's a great starting point. Because as Portland is starting to sound more and more like Portland is going to start enforcing some of their homeless ordinances and then pushing people out. And so as they push them out, we're liable to get an increase in population. So just something to think about.
For a motion. Would you like a first reading? Mayor? I'll take a first reading.
Okay, Mayor, this is ordinance 2022-12, an ordinance repealing and replacing chapter 8.35 of the Sandy Municipal Code, camping prohibited in certain places.
Make a motion that we approve the first reading.
For a second.
I want to hear Rich. or
No,
Lori.
I'll second.
All right.
You guys did it, so take credit.
A motion by Counselor Peetzold, a second by Counselor Sheldon. All those in favor signify by saying aye or thumbs up.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, or thumbs down. Seeing that we're a not unanimous. Let's go to second reading.
Okay, this is ordinance 2022-12, an ordinance repealing and replacing chapter 8.35 of the Sandy Municipal Code, camping prohibited in certain places.
For a motion. Oh, Lori.
Lori,
We want you to make it, Lori.
Oh, sure. I'll make a motion to approve the second reading.
For a second.
I'll second it.
Motion by Counselor Smallwood, a second by Counselor Sheldon to accept the second reading. All those in favor signify by saying aye or give me a thumbs up.
Aye.
Nays or thumbs down. Motion carries. Well, congratulations. Thank you to both Lori and Rich for your participation, staff, all of your hard work. As everybody, thank you. Really appreciate it. Great
One
job.
question, when's this going to be effective?
30 days.
30 days. Okay.
All right. Sweet.
So the chief will get everybody trained. Excellent.
Moving forward to our authorization of repairs to Strawbridge Parkway. This has been a fun little project for you. Welcome to the city.
Add to your little job.
Read about sinkholes in
It might be a
Florida,
metaphor
but not
for
in
the career, I
Sandy.
don't know.
Yeah.
I think it was worse for Jake Rutledge. He was the one on call. He had a heck of a Saturday, so.
Good old Jake.
Well, thank you, council. The decision to be made tonight is whether to approve a resolution ratifying an emergency procurement due to a failed stormwater line on Strawbridge Parkway and related sinkhole, and whether to authorize payments for emergency repairs. Sort of to give you some background, on April 4th, council authorized an amendment with Oxbow Construction for rehabilitation of approximately 150 feet of corrugated metal storm sewer pipe at Tupper Road. There were concerns that there was going to be the failure would cause damage to the roadway, and an emergency fix was authorized. The contractor moved ahead and ordered the lining and was just getting ready to initiate the repair when the unusual atmospheric weather event occurred. On June 11th, it was reported a sinkhole was forming on Strawbridge Parkway along the same stormwater pipeline. There was significant washout of the roadbed, backfill. Public Works responded to a sinkhole and cordoned off the area. The stormwater pipeline had collapsed, creating a void. Portions of the asphalt around the sinkhole and sidewalk were unsupported, and a water line and sandy net fiber were in the immediate area as well at risk. Strawbridge Parkway was closed at Tupper Road. Public Works, and I really have to thank Leeway Engineering and Oxbow Construction, immediately mobilized, worked together to propose a fix extremely quickly. We also worked with DSL to get authorization to move ahead as the stormwater pipeline routes No Name Creek, which was authorized in just a day.
And it's now clear. The creek is now clear. Unbelievable. Just
All right.
no.
Oh, he's being.
Sorry, go ahead.
So under ORS,
Good news.
Under ORS 279B, the city is able to execute an emergency procurement through an amendment to Oxbow's contract. We received an initial estimate of $200,000 for the repair, and the city is able to authorize the work and have the council ratify by resolution at the June 21st, 2022 council meeting. I do have an update as of just an hour ago. They have found some additional damage to the pipe. And so I would like that up. I'd like to up that from $200,000 to $220,000, which will get that repaired in full. The recommendation is to approve the resolution ratifying an emergency procurement due to the failed stormwater line on Strawbridge Parkway and related sinkhole, and authorize payments for the emergency repairs. In terms of budgetary impact, Oxbow Construction provided a quote of $200,000. It's now up to $220,000. Previously, April 4th, we approved an amendment, or council approved an amendment totaling $151,959.60 for relining the stormwater line. The total of both amendments was just under $352,000. The Stormwater Fund does not have enough funds available to allocate to this project, as we discussed earlier today. Funding for this emergency repair will come from the city's $2.5 million in ARPA funding. Using the ARPA funds or general fund contingency would avoid the need to take on additional debt in the fund and reserve rate increases towards the stormwater utility capital and operations. So quick sum up, I've been working with the contractor. And so if we authorize, I'm going to increase that. $371,959 total. It's 220,000 to cover what they discovered, because they did start working Saturday, plus the previously authorized repairs.
So how much for ARPA?
It'll be a total of 371, just under $372,000.
No, just like, man, I don't like touching that fund for this stuff.
I know.
What's the choice though? Is there any other choices?
It's better than the alternative.
No.
If we didn't have it, it would have been contingency,
Yes.
Right, contingency of.
which
Right off Strawbridge.
is not very big.
So what they're proposing currently is to, they're going to excavate and replace the piping. And so the liner we've purchased, we can put towards another section of pipe, because we've already paid for the liner. But we'll have a much more robust repair with this additional money. So they've worked within the total budget I've shown, and I recommend this solution. It's I know this sinkhole is not good, but I just feel lucky that we had the right contractors and engineers on board, and we've been able to address it so quickly.
No doubt.
Is there,
Wow.
is there any additional work that could be needed?
Yes.
You've already found an increase in a little bit. How are we looking in terms of risks for next? You pretty comfortable that you've got it?
So we will have a liner that we've paid for. We'll have to come up with some additional funding, but there is additional part of the stormwater system we'd like to place that liner in. So we'll have to figure out some construction costs to place that somewhere else. There is going to be additional investigation. It's only been, 7 days since it occurred.
What are
And
we looking at? A do not exceed kind of deal?
yes, right now because this is contingency funding, we're limiting this to just the immediate need.
Okay.
Question I had is finding this, identifying it. This pipe is, I don't know. I mean, I could be the historian, but I'm not that old. It's been there a long time. Let's just say that. No Name Creek has been piped through this. But it goes also out past where you live, all the way down there. So are we going to be scoping it? Are we concerned that other pieces of this pipe at the same age, put it around the same time, having that? And I can see your frowns, not quite smiles, and nodding. And that way, I guess that answers my question. Is I just wanted to kind of get the take on the rest of this No Name Creek 48-inch pipe.
That $1.50 increase we passed on waste on stormwater, that's a drop in the bucket.
Right,
Yes.
but what my
We all do that.
main concern would be, are we going to, is there another issue like what we just found that could be happening in October, or, type thing, just because we just don't see what we don't see what's underground? So are we scoping it with a camera or something like that?
How's that stormwater plan coming?
Well, or around that area?
We do need to do additional investigation, and we've started talking about this with the teams. We're just working out how to pay for it. There is an additional area that the contractor who's been working here this past year knows that is another area where the liner should go, but there's going to be additional money for the installation of that liner now. But we've paid for the liner.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but
We
not,
should be looking at scoping down. I mean,
Yeah.
if you follow the route of where the stormwater goes, and if the pipe and fill is in the same condition, same concerns. This happens to be right where Strawbridge, it
Right.
crosses underneath Strawbridge, so the compression of the road could be a factor, but we need to do more investigation of that.
because that park has been just a swamp ever since.
Used to be a lake there or
Or a log pond.
Right, yeah. The other question is, did any of this damage there, did it happen? Was there any discovery of the water going into the sewer line anywhere near that area?
Well,
That helped the sewer.
what we think is that the lining of the sewer, that's where the water was going. And so when the big storm came through, it had to go somewhere else, which contributed to the washout. So
So our success, put a hole in the road.
Run it into someplace
tighten up
else.
the
Run
wastewater,
down the road.
pushing more water into the stormwater system.
I was hoping that you would say, yeah, we found a big like stream
Oh,
going into the
gotcha.
sewer system and we're gonna cut that off now, hoping out a different situation. But what you're saying is because
Maybe we
we're
did.
tightening it up, it couldn't go anywhere. So
We're still looking. for this.
Maybe in the past it was.
and maybe in the past it was. I mean, we've been seeing it go in the right direction. So
Well, we gotta do this.
Yeah, you gotta do it.
So what do you need from us?
With the increase.
Mayor, just to point out, we've broken this into two separate motions.
I think I skipped over the recommendation. We recommend approving the resolution ratifying an emergency procurement due to the failed stormwater line on Strawbridge Parkway and related sinkhole, and authorize payments for emergency repairs. In the suggested motion language, I do have a late addition. The second motion, the not to exceed should be changed to $220,000.
Okay.
This is based on information from just an hour ago.
I move to approve resolution 2022-16.
And I'll second.
There's a motion by Counselor Hokinson, a second by Counselor Exner. All those in favor signify by saying aye or give me a thumbs up. Opposed, nays, or thumbs down. Motion carries. Second motion.
I move to authorize the city manager to enter into an agreement with Oxbow Construction for the Strawbridge Parkway Stormwater Line and sinkhole emergency repair in an amount not to exceed $220,000 pursuant to ORS 279B-080 parentheses 1.
What a motion there. What, is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, you got it was such a great motion. You guys
I know,
should be
I attach my name to
Don't
that
give him
motion.
that.
Yeah, all right, we got a motion by Counselor Hokinson, a second by Counselor Petzold. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Give me a thumbs up. Aye. Opposed, nays, or a thumbs down. Motion carries. All right, well, thank you, Jenny.
Thanks, thanks to Oxbow too.
Thanks to your staff for all the hard work.
Thanks for your team, everybody.
Yeah. Good fast work.
Yeah, no fun. It was a fun email.
Jordan, Jeff, the next time we get together for one of these agendas, let's come up with something really positive to present to the rest of us.
I know, she looks like she's just beat down.
Right.
Just
Just
Always
something,
frowning.
just something awesome, you know?
You found gold.
Yeah,
We found a big gold mine.
yeah, something like that.
Oh, boy. To evacuate back to city.
Tyler, election to receive state shared revenues.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll keep this very brief. Annually, the state of Oregon requires us to elect to receive state shared revenues. It's more of a formality than anything else. So essentially, if we want to continue to receive revenue from the state for cigarette, alcohol, and gas taxes, we need to elect to receive those. They're already built into the budget, so there's no budgetary impact. If we opted to not approve this resolution this evening, we would forego about $1.1 million in revenue next fiscal year. So I don't recommend that approach. Staff recommends adopting resolution 2022-13.
I recommend we take the money too.
Motion. I make a motion that the council approve resolution 2022-13, a resolution declaring the city of Sandy's election to receive state revenues.
For a second.
Second.
All right, motion by Counselor Walker, second made by Counselor Hokinson. All those in favor signify by saying aye or give me a thumbs up.
Aye.
And opposed, give me a nay or thumbs down. All right, motion carries.
We should have timed that one.
Well,
might be
you
a
should,
record.
you should have let Jenny
should've
give the
given it to Jenny.
presentation about receiving. the
Next
state
time,
funds.
Jenny.
It was pretty selfish, actually, Tyler, but we'll let you
Sorry.
get away with
I gotta take the easy win sometimes.
it. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Jordan, report, city manager.
Thanks, Mayor. All fun stuff tonight. I did want to bring up the longest day Parkway. So it's June 23rd. So a couple days from now, actually today is the longest day, right? Yeah, so we got some great weather finally. So looking like we got good weather for it. It's at Cascadia Park, and we have hot dogs and stuff to grill up, or the council to participate in the grilling. You could take turns, or another thing that we've worked on is a raffle at the table for pollinator plants. Theme that is growing popular here with our Bee City USA
It has
designation.
tremendous leadership.
We make sure we have someone dressed in a
Absolutely.
bee costume.
You have to be bold to be
Well,
able to be in that
yeah.
leadership.
I think technically it kind of starts at 6:30, but we'll probably be setting up by sometime after 5 o'clock. So come a little bit early, and we'll get you set up, start grilling, meeting folks as they come by. And I think with the weather, we'll probably get some great participation this year. Shoot me any questions this week if you have any thoughts or questions about it, but hope to see you guys down there. And then Nose Quest is coming up this weekend. Nose Quest for the last several years has just been pulling the hot days year after year. But the 5K, 10K is on Saturday. The 362nd and Bell Street groundbreaking. Working with the mayor, we've set a time for 9 a.m. on June 29th. So please, all is invited. We have the golden shovels. And we'll be doing,
Yellow, right?
well, spray painted.
Okay.
We're
Well, give me
not out there
ideas.
buying gold shovels. But we'll be doing that at the Bell Street portion. We're there at the high school. I think it's easier to park and get to, and better for the contractor and for you all to do that ceremony. So Wednesday, June 29th at 9 a.m. Kind of wanted to do it first thing, well, kind of in the morning before folks head off to work and stuff. Fireworks, June 4th.
I hope we got a discount.
I mean,
Nice
yeah.
celebration.
I'm sorry, it went great. No, well, I didn't get a spring, so
It was canceled this year because of the rain.
seriously,
4th of June.
current trends hold would be good to go. But I was going to give the chief a hard time, but all systems go for July 4th. Looking forward to that. But that's also a Monday. So the council meeting for July 4th has been canceled. We'll give you the night off, but also probably means that July 18th will be pretty packed. So apologies ahead of time for that. And then I also want to mention, I will be out of the office, planning to be out of the office right after that. July 19th through the 21st is the Oregon City Managers Conference. And then my family and I are heading to the East Coast for a wedding. First time throwing the kids on a plane after COVID and flying them across the country for a wedding. So I will be out until August 2nd. So the August 1st meeting, pretty light for staff, but I think we'll be capable.
I want to make it pretty happy. I want to surprise you when you get home.
Okay, well, I love surprises. But just giving you a heads up on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Done.
I just want to say to Jordan, good luck. I used to make excuses so I wouldn't have to fly with my kids when they were young. So I was a terrible person. in that regard. Honey, I have to go early. That was terrible. She's probably listening. All right. First of all, I want to thank Jeff for the work he did on the council rules. For a year, I've been saying I would get around to it, and I think he did a great job of putting them together and identifying the changes and bringing all these concepts together. So even though we didn't get through much, I think encourage everybody to read through it. I think you'll find a lot of really good stuff there, and hopefully in our next work session, we can make a lot of progress. And then obviously rate increases. Nobody wants to vote for them. Nobody wants them. Hopefully everyone can just understand how critical they are to fixing problems like the very visible one in Tupper Road, Strawbridge, but the ones we don't see, the discharges into Tickle Creek, or the cleanliness and quality of our water down the road and things like that. So anyway, thank you for your support on that. So
Counselor.
Carl.
Last week, I met with several folks in the city to talk about the discussion with youth drug use and abuse, and was well attended. I think there was close to 35, 40 people there. I noticed that Rochelle's two employees, John and Carol, were there as well to discuss some of the points that the city could be involved in. And I just really want to say thanks for that participation. And I'm looking forward to helping some of that move along. It's been a tough couple of years with the COVID, and the kids just are really our future. And I just don't want to see those folks be ignored, and find a way to move them into a better place. And I think there's some really good ideas came up. You'll see some more of that as I push along here. So glad that happened. I do have a concern. In fact, it was right out in front of our business there on Strauss and Proctor. I noticed there's not just there, but a lot of places up and down the street, there's a lot of these barriers and half repaired mountain festivals coming up. What's our strategy to make that as least impactful to our walkers and pedestrians through that busy time? Or do we have one?
Have them work faster. I think they've been impacted by the weather like everything else. So they're behind on getting those ramps in. I don't think this came up during the Mountain Festival conversation. They've gotten the permit for the parade.
Right.
And so work is not supposed to be going on, overlapping that time period. But I'll, happy to raise this concern and see if they can at least help facilitate the pedestrian.
Especially right there where
Carnival,
the carnival is, and you've got things like the Happy across the street, and people use our parking lot as a place to park, and it's just a real busy spot, especially there. Both sides of the Strauss are impacted with all the fences and the barricades and stuff. And so I just don't want to see anybody get hurt that way.
Okay.
And then lastly, I had talked to some of the council about attending the Clackamas River Watershed Council, which got moved to July 21st. It's at Barton Park. Anybody wants to show up and kind of discuss what's going on there? They're very interested in what our wastewater treatment plant fixes are being done, and good time to rub shoulders with some folks who are involved with that and DEQ. So if there is some interest there, I'd certainly be happy to make that work. And that's it.
I always love rubbing shoulders with DEQ.
Absolutely. It's good stuff. That's good character.
Kathleen.
DEQ is not going to be at the meeting though.
They're part of the Clackamas Watershed Council. They're part of the board members. They'll be there. In a different role. In a different role, right. And not their leadership. It's more of a staff people. Fish bios, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Thanks for all the hard work on the staff reports, the camping stuff. I'm really thrilled to see that put into place, especially as it applies to our parks. I want us to try to keep going with the community campus ground. There's, I think, some issues down there. There seems to be a lot of the LEO reports, or whatever you call them, what are they, police calls or something, whatever you call the paper that gets put out there. There seems to be calls associated with that area pretty often, and I have a feeling they might be hanging out down below the track where we cleaned up last year, quite a huge area. But thrilled to see this finally have some tools to kind of apply to it. Looking forward to the Longest Day Parkway, looking forward to the Noah's Quest and the Mountain Festival, of course. And then the other thing I'm excited about involved in is the Kiwanis Cruising that's taking place on July 24th. It's a Sunday morning, and it'll be down at Oral Hall. So I invite everybody to participate in that. It's a great fundraiser for school scholarships and things like that. It's a great program. The library is really busy, and I'm thrilled to see that they're just going all guns blazing with all their activities, and then also thrilled to see the community center just going with all sorts of events again. Really glad to see that opened up and getting reset. Really proud of those activities and the staff work that it took to get there. That's all I have.
Yeah. So that was close. We already talked about that. Hey, the crosswalks. Still that same thing. I drive by, there's that one crosswalk on Bartow Road. It's just down from Melissa. It sets in the shade. It's on a corner. I really like, I don't know if it's just because the weather's getting better, but I constantly seeing people fail to stop for pedestrians right there. And I just think some of it is, it doesn't really look like a crosswalk because it just has a slightly discolored bricks on it. So some more markings, maybe some signage or something like that, I think would go a long ways to help drivers so that some kid doesn't get hit.
We have the minutes. I'll check on yours.
Okay.
Yes.
The other thing is I just want to say thank you to you guys that came up and testified today. I look forward to Jordan's response to some of your questions and staff's response, but the other day I did come across somebody that had some issues. And I think the response was that we don't care. And so I want to make sure that I'm really trying to tell people that we do care. I do understand and want to see that people come and tell us because the concerns I think are important. So I just want to say thank you personally for coming here and then go on the record of saying that I don't know where the decisions will land ultimately, but it does matter to us. So thank you. And that's really all I have.
Great. Thanks, Rich. Lori, you there?
So just keeping with the road theme, Jordan, are we monitoring the ever-growing pothole on Proctor in front of Big Apple?
I'm monitoring it, yes.
Is that ODOT's or is that us?
That's all that.
That's all that.
Well, it's ODOT, but my understanding is we have gone in and proactively filled in the past, not to our best abilities, but
We can. I would prefer state uses the state dollars to fix that,
Well,
and
I-
also
I-
to their
I-
standards
I-
too.
I
but, yeah.
totally agree, but my only eons ago in my long history of being there, I just remember asking about a pothole and Mike said, yeah, that it was something that it's either wait 3 or 4 months while it gets bigger and horrible, or community drives by it, or maybe, obviously everything has scale and cost reward, right? But I would like to, some of these things, if it doesn't cost that much,
Yeah.
take that much,
Yeah, I mean, we're heading into the construction season. We got the Vista Loop going on right now. We got the ADA ramps. I know there's a new contact at ODOT this last year. We'll get in touch with them this week and see if they have plans for fixing. It's in the same train there, a couple big potholes.
Yeah.
So are there no examples of IGAs out there where we can just have our own pothole program and we turn around and we bill the state for the money after the fact, make sure that gets
We can
done in a
propose something
timely
like that.
fashion? I think we should.
That'd be a good proposal. I think from being on the council, what's happened, what we've seen before, back to Lazenby's days, is the state would rather ignore it and have us maintain it, which we don't want to maintain because that's really expensive and we got state of Oregon's population just driving across that we can't afford unless we wanted to.
Unless they paid for it.
Let's give it a shot.
Yeah, I'm also, 3 years ago, they said it was in the queue for repaving the stretch, and
That's right.
it hasn't happened. So I don't know if it's been just kicked off or what, or if it's coming up fall and summer, but
All right.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lori, I as always interrupted. I apologize.
So that needs to get fixed. The sooner the better, because it's just in the last 2 weeks, it's grown substantially. So it's only going to continue to get bigger. And that's all I got.
Thanks, Lori. Appreciate it.
Might be our new single.
Yeah, you never know.
Sorry, Jim. Is that too soon?
Traffic now, maybe. Jeremy, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for coming in, guys, and speaking. It is hard decisions we make, and that's what we get paid big bucks for, right?
Mhm.
Which we don't get paid anything for. It is, it's a tough thing. I always look at redundancy too, and some of the things that we've talked about is having that redundancy there. We have looked at for several years, different options, and we took things back out and looked at different options. And so I think, we've done a lot of good diligency on that. But raising some of these funds wasn't just for that water line to connect. And so I want to remind us of that too. It was also to expand our capacity of what we already existingly have. And so we need to get those raised so that we can do that, which will then take, so that we don't have to draw as much water or other sources. So on that, I've noticed people have commented to me, I've ran by it there. I got my running story in there, Lori. But on Bluff Road, right there across from Strawbridge, there is a trailer that's been parked there for a while. It's blocking, when people pull out of the trailer court, it blocks turning left. It's coming down Bluff Road, so you can't see. And I've heard from people that, and as I ran by it, it's kind of scary because you can't see someone coming down the hill, and you kind of pick up speed and because you try to make up the other side of the hill. And looks like someone is living there. Right there on the corner park, too close to the entrance there. So if that could be looked at, it'd probably be good. And then July 18th, I will be on vacation. So I don't know how big this meeting or topics will be, but I will be camping.
Yeah. Okay. Have fun. All right. Thank you, Jeremy. Yeah. Thank you for coming and for your testimony. This was that last discussion was the revisiting of that decision. Our council had already made a previous decision not to. And I hope what you take from that is we're not overly excited about wanting to do this. The fact is we're a very small purchaser of that water. And so, us either participating or not, it's just going to have a very little decision on theirs. I can only speak for myself and say, I have huge grievances with the location, with all kinds of things going on. It's just, as you heard the discussion, we have very little opportunities at our disposal. We're going to investigate all of them. I know I, for one, am watching the timeline and some of those deadlines with a keen eye. So we're aware, we're trying to navigate, we're not excited about it. We're trying to do our best and figure it out. But please know that your testimony did not land on deaf ears. We hear it. We definitely do. As for wastewater, thank you for offering your support, your help with that. I'm sure we'll definitely look to take you up on some of that and know that, this is, I think for all of us, these are the sleepless nights. These rate increases, these are the hard ones. These are difficult for us. Fun times here in Sandy. Noah's Quest coming up. 4th of July, Sandy Mountain Festival. It just really is an incredible time to be in Sandy. The Kiwanis flying, just great traditions that we have here. Great homeless discussion. Thank you again for staff and for Lori and Rich's work on that. It's a great policy that we put forward. Question on, and you may not even have the answer for this yet, Jenny, but I bet Jeremy might, is, so I remember, that we had drainage issues in that parking lot there, that lower parking lot for Meinig Park. Then we tore it up, and then the drainage issues are even worse today. Like when we have big rain, I drive by and it just seems like that whole parking lot is just always flooded. Is there anything we can do there? Is it just kind of like we've been through it and
Yeah.
The drains,
what is
the
it?
drains have to be kept clear and they're not.
Is that what it is?
That's partially
It's a
it.
permeable
The parking lot itself is porous pavement.
I know.
So
Yeah.
we actually have a contractor coming in to use like a vacuum like device, a little like piece of equipment that's like a vehicle that sucks up all this gunk that's gotten into the permeable asphalt, and that will help it get back to how it's supposed to function, and that's let the water filter down through that pavement. So that's what's happened over time. You have to maintain it after you build it.
15 years ago, that was the popular thing to do, was have these permeable, and that was the biggest joke and waste of money everywhere. Sidewalks were even worse.
Still mandated in a lot of
It's,
But I
It's
will say
horrible.
that cleaning out the drains is like
We got,
the part, yeah, you know, and because I've got pictures showing the drains all and the water,
Yeah.
you know.
Well,
So
years ago, there was a car that was up to its glass that got left there when someone was commuted when it flooded before they redid that.
so before they redid it, that pipe was just a pipe that went through it. Now there's a big vault
Yep.
in there that holds the water. That's what happened.
that's
They,
what happened.
they put that in there for those drains to be cleared. And that was what the money in the project was for, because it would just flood every year and there'd be 4 feet of water sitting in that parking lot.
So I think part of it is it a public works job? Is it a parks maintenance worker job? You know,
It's a, we realized, but there was that call out a couple months ago on both teams, yeah.
Okay. Well, my kids were making fun of me for it, and when I didn't have the answer for it, they made fun of that, and so I had to figure that out. So thank you.
So just call the kids the next time and have them ask you.
Yeah. Bell Street, 362nd on the 29th at 9 AM. Jordan mentioned that. I did invite, and all three accepted. They're excited. Jan Lee, Bethany Schultz, and John Hamlin are going to show up for that. I mean, that we kind of really started pushing that forward. Jordan, will you look into the city's dinner? I would love for us to try to host one of these cities dinners while the weather's nice.
Yeah, I think
wanna get in
we're
front of the
actually
line.
on hook for next year, right? And we,
For next year?
the
or
Clackamas
not?
City's dinner.
Oh, no, he's talking about the
No,
employees.
that's what I'm talking. Oh, I'm talking about both, but
Oh.
it's cities, Clackamas County Cities Dinner we're
Yeah.
on. We're doing
I
that?
think there is a
think
schedule
it's March.
proposed. Yeah, I think it's
March of next year.
March.
Oh,
It's
okay.
alphabetical.
March of next year.
There
And
was
then
everybody
employee
scrambled
employee
it.
appreciation, you guys are planning something?
August 11th.
11.
Awesome.
Oh, shoot, I'll be in
Is that-
Hawaii.
Oh, bummer.
Well, that's where we're doing it.
Oh, good.
would you
Yeah, you're
save the date or something, you know, put something out?
Is that
so
when
we
the
have-
council pays for the?
That's right.
Yeah, let us all know. Oh, go ahead, please.
I just want to make sure that everybody really gives thanks to, you know, I'm just thrilled that we have Clackamas County Bank sponsoring these fireworks every year.
Yep.
And I think they just, you know, we don't show enough appreciation to those folks for how much they do, especially for the fireworks. So when we are, you know, talking about it, you know, just kind of highlighting thanks to Clackamas County Bank, because I know we put in some money, but they've been there and really with the big bucks. So I want to show our appreciation.
Absolutely. All right, great. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it for this next meeting.